One right in the heart of Ihai City, hidden among towering skyscrapers, stands a very massive building. This is the first central hospital, specifically the busy department of ophthalmology. Inside his office, Dr. Zio sits down with a young man named Jang to figure out his condition. The doctor stares intently at the medical report, trying to spot any hidden mistakes. It is as if he simply cannot believe what is written on the page. Meanwhile, a very puzzled Jang wonders if his condition relates to something called period X. He tries to find the cause of his failing sight while the doctor asks for his symptoms. Covering his face with both hands, the young man tries to explain his strange reality. He says his eyes are completely blurry, and his vision is nowhere near 100%. Every time he opens his eyes wide, he feels a sharp discomfort and his capillaries burst. The sheer strain is too much. Whenever he focuses, a bright red streak cuts through. Right now, the doctor sitting directly in front of him is completely covered in a red haze. Dr. Zio listens closely, keeping his gaze locked onto his patient. But for Jang, everything remains blood red. Suddenly, his eyes catch something bizarre. A strange scale floats right above the physician, but the red mist blurs it. He squinted as hard as he could, trying to read the blurry meter. It clearly displays 18%. He opens his eyes wider, trying to make sense of it. Staring at the floating numbers, he asks out loud if that is the doctor's actual age. Dr. Zio is absolutely speechless. He has no idea what this kid is talking about. He even wonders if this patient walked into the wrong department by mistake. Jang ponders the weird percentage, wondering if it represents death. If that is indeed a countdown, then 18% is pretty low. The doctor suddenly asks if he has been drinking, but Jang is too distracted to care. He tells the medic to wait a second, keeping his eyes glued to the air. Annoyed by the attitude, Dr. Zio holds his breath and stays quiet. Closing his eyes once more, Jang sinks deep into his own mind. He tunes out the entire room. After a moment, he finally blinks his eyes open. He quickly apologizes to Dr. Zio for getting so easily distracted. The doctor says nothing. Pinching his temples, Zio groans in slight frustration. He tells Jang to focus, but then decides to drop his previous question. Pulling a small diagnostic flashlight from his pocket, the doctor shines it forward. He closely checks Jang's pupils to see if the written diagnosis makes any sense. Gently parting the eyelids, the doctor instructs him to look left and right. Jang obediently follows every single instruction without a word. Holding the light, Dr. Zio is completely stumped by what he sees. There is absolutely nothing wrong. His eyes and pupils look perfectly healthy. After enduring the bright beam, Jang closes his eyes to let them rest. Soon he is cleared to head home, but as he opens his eyes once more, something changes. A tiny, mysterious red figure appears right in his pupil, completely unnoticed by the doctor. Walking down the busy hospital hallway, Jang still sees everything through a red haze. Suddenly, he stops dead in his tracks as something unbelievable unfolds before him. He freezes, trying to process this brand new visual shockwave. Above the head of every single person, floating scales suddenly materialize. Each bar displays a different percentage of some unknown mysterious metric. Smiling, he realizes his conjunctivitis is gone, replaced by a strange new power. With total clarity, he felt completely healthy and energized. Walking away, he realized those weird percentage bars must represent his own blood levels. He wondered how to put this bizarre trait to good use. Meanwhile, one billboard near the hospital displayed a fierce battle between humans and terrifying monsters. Stepping out of the clinic, the young man surveyed his unfamiliar surroundings before slowly heading home to rest. Broadcasts warned residents that the elite night watch was launching a new recruitment drive tonight. In this 99th year of the cataclysm, humanity had been forced to retreat into small, heavily fortified safe zones. Not far from these high-rise buildings, surveillance drones buzzed constantly through the air, monitoring the situation and keeping watch. Jang could not hide his surprise. Staring at his surroundings, he needed a closer look before heading back to his apartment. Navigating the crowded streets, he lost himself in thought, completely ignoring the bustling crowd. Suddenly, glancing down, he saw his sneaker shoelace had come undone and was dragging on the dirty ground, making it tough to walk. To avoid tripping, Jang paused to tie his shoe, kneeling down to quickly loop the laces into a tight double knot. Squinting with a cigarette between his lips, he tried to understand his vision. Why did everything look so different? Suddenly, a bizarre conversation from nearby passersby snapped him back to reality. Instantly, Jang felt a massive, crushing weight drop right onto his shoulders. Sending him stumbling onto the cold asphalt, it felt like a violent electric shock was ripping straight through his flesh from every direction. He froze, utterly paralyzed. Trying desperately to stand, the young man realized his limbs refused to move. Pain bloomed inside. Cold panic gripped him. Jang had no clue what was happening. Everything was new and terrifying. Then a dark silhouette of a boy flashed across his pupils. Only this time it was pitch black, clawing to get out. The immense pressure behind his eyes was unbearable. He couldn't understand it. Look up, a colossal green moon rises between the skyscrapers, bathing the city in an eerie green glow. Completely frozen, Jang stared directly into the light, wondering what nightmare would unfold next. Out of nowhere, a heavily armed warrior girl crashed down right beside him, completely catching him off guard. Before he could even blink, a brutal clash erupted between the girl and a hideous beast as she swung her weapon. Wildly, Jang stood absolutely motionless below, watching the chaos unfold in shock. Paralyzed by what he saw, within moments, the entire street became a war zone. Countless hunters and monsters materialized, clashing violently, using incredible superhuman abilities. They fought desperately to protect their city from the invading horde. Staring up at that eerie green glow, the truth finally sank in. The world was in deep trouble. Their peaceful life was nothing but an illusion. Gazing back at the massive moon, Jang noticed something even more terrifying, a colossal gauge floating right above it. Panic gripped him. This timer was ticking down. Suddenly, a cold drizzle began to fall from the dark sky, casting strange shadows over the concrete jungle. Cold rain drops hit Jang right in the eye. It blurs his vision. He stands frozen, staring, trying to make sense of what just happened. Squeezing his eyes shut, Jang looks inward, searching, desperately seeking any answers. He needs the strength to keep going, but the cold reality persists. Rain pelts his forehead. All around him, the city remains completely chaotic. Crowds of busy people rush past, oblivious, completely lost in their own heads. Jang steps onto the crosswalk, heading straight home, moving with absolute determination. He refuses to look at the massive crowds of strangers passing him by. A nearby girl screams out some cheap store promotion. Nobody even looks. A boy helps his grandfather cross, smiling, warning him to watch his step. Jang pauses, looking around at the peaceful flow of the city streets. The night patrol unit is active, a reliable shield protecting this fragile world. Peace has returned. Meanwhile, a sketchy merchant tries to hawk some weird bottles. He shoves his goods at passersby. They glare back with pure annoyance. Jang walks on, trying to convince himself that everything is perfectly safe. Just calm down, it was all a dream, just his overactive imagination. But the setting sun glows blood red between skyscrapers. The terrifying scale remains. Is this peaceful reality just a lie? Suddenly, a heavy grip. A hand drops heavily onto his shoulder, pulling him backward with immense force. Jang tenses, panic surges. He spins around to face the pushy salesman. The merchant grins widely, holding out a wooden box full of strange medicines. He eagerly claims his street drugs are just as good as official prescriptions. Suddenly, a foul stench hits Jang's nose, a sharp, putrid, rotten odor. He pinches his nose. This awful smell belongs to a literal monster. Why is he selling this? Undeterred, the merchant opens his box wider. He displays his inventory, rows of bizarre, glowing glass bottles of every shape. Is this stuff actually free? Jang asks with a heavy dose of sarcasm. The merchant simply waves him off, totally clueless about any hidden monsters. Jang quickly catches up, joking, asking if the guy carries any divine oil. The deal is done. As the sun sinks over the skyline, his bus arrives. It ambles along the crowded streets, sticking strictly to its daily route. Jang climbs aboard with his purchase. Did he just get ripped off? 3,001 is way too expensive for a tiny bottle of oil. Staring out the window at the peaceful streets, he laughs off his paranoia. The digital stop display flashes outside. The bus slowly pulls up to the platform, alerting the waiting passengers. Doors hiss open. Automated speakers announce they have reached South Street. The driver tells passengers to get ready, pushing through the heavily crowded bus. Then it hits. A sudden, sickening jolt paralyzes Jang's entire body. An electric shock surges through his veins. He cannot move a muscle. He glances at the dark window. His reflection is completely, utterly alone. Panic returns. In an instant, every single passenger simply vanishes. The cozy interior dissolves. Everything around him is swallowed by darkness. A toxic green haze floods the bus. Jang stands frozen in terror. His eyes snap wide open. He is desperately trying to comprehend this glitch. Trying to shake off the shock, he looked around and realized everything was normal. The passengers were just sitting quietly in their seats while the bus rolled along. This was the second time. Jung tried desperately to understand these weird visions, but he just couldn't. The bus screeched to a halt at the next stop, and the young man knew he had to watch his back on the way home. Soon, twilight settled over the city as Jung made it back to his high-rise apartment. Inside, fresh white towels were laid out on the bathroom radiator. For a guy living alone, his place was surprisingly neat and tidy. Drying off after a hot shower, a wave of pure relief washed over him. It felt amazing to finally wash away the grime after his long hospital stay. But as he looked in the mirror, a bizarre pattern on his chest caught his eye. He stared in shock, utterly baffled by where this mark came from. Gently tracing the lines, he realized he had seen this symbol once before. It was in an old book back in his study. He remembered that day. He had been searching the shelves with a flashlight, looking for a comic. Then out of nowhere, heavy books came flying straight at his head. He ducked and swore, desperately trying to shield himself from the sudden, chaotic barrage. He had barely touched the shelf, yet the books violently shifted on their own. They rained down on him like heavy stones, completely knocking him off balance. He stumbled back in shock. Now get ready, because things get really weird. His skin began to glow. That library accident must have triggered this mark. The violent impact of those falling books had left behind a glowing curse. Suddenly, an agonizing pain stabbed through his core, bringing him straight to his knees. Gasping for air on the cold floor, he struggled to make sense of it. As Jung pressed his hand to the pattern, a searing heat flared up. His insides were boiling, and he felt completely helpless against the agony. Desperate to stop the torment, he dragged himself back to the shower. He cranked the handle, letting a burst of ice-cold water drench him. As the cold stream hit his burning skin, Jung let out a ragged sigh. He closed his eyes, letting the water soothe the intense heat. Slowly standing up, he let the cooling spray wash over him. The fiery pain finally started to fade, and his skin stopped sizzling. But the dark crest on his chest kept pulsing like an embedded microchip. Then a bizarre digital gauge flickered to life in the mirror's reflection. Seeing the gauge hit 100, Jung immediately understood what it meant. A faint, knowing smile crossed his face, and he gave a quiet nod. Stepping out of the bathroom, he left a trail of rising steam. Sensing an eerie chill, he spun around to look behind him. What he saw left him completely frozen in absolute disbelief. Staring at the floor, Jung realized his body wasn't casting any shadow. A cold dread gripped his heart, and a terrified scream escaped his throat. Where did his shadow go? What was happening to him? He feared this was the start of a horrific nightmare. He frantically checked every corner of the room, but Jung's shadow was simply gone. Still pretty angry, the young man finally spotted it on the wall and let out a sigh of relief. Some seriously strange things had been happening to him lately. Sighing heavily, the guy decides to leave the bathroom, completely exhausted by the bizarre events of the past few days. Grabbing the door handle, our hero has no clue what lies on the other side, feeling both terrified and excited. Suddenly stepping out of the bathroom, he spots his own massive, dark shadow standing right in front of him, looking incredibly creepy in the dim light. With glowing eyes, it stares directly at the guy, who freezes in absolute shock. He cannot look away, even though it completely lacks any distinct facial features. The shadow clearly shows interest, staring right back at him and slowly tilting its head. Jung looks the shadow up and down, trying to make sense of this wild situation, but his mind is a complete mess. Then he feels the icy coldness of the bathroom tile under his bare feet. The sudden chill snaps him back to reality, forcing him to push aside his rising panic. With a slight smile, our hero accepts this strange new reflection, thinking it might actually be pretty fun to live with her, watching her every move. His pulse quickens as his heart beats wildly. The good news: the shadow is real. The bad news: she is definitely alive. Feeling a burning sensation run through his body again, Jung walks into the hallway, and the shadow keeps a safe distance, quietly watching him from afar, while our hero tries to figure her out. Evening slowly settles over the bustling city, and the Windows of the distant high-rises begin to glow one by one. Inside his dark apartment, Jung is dying to find out what kind of powers his shadow actually possesses, almost hovering right over the guy. The shadow stands with a grin, her long arms hanging loosely by her torso. Jung thoughtfully wonders which of her special abilities to test first, and asks her to raise her right hand, obediently following his commands. She lifts her hand up, waving back at him quite easily. Thrilled by how obedient she is, Jung decides to push it further and asks her to lift her left leg, determined to test her limits. Alternating her arms and legs, she starts to bend and dance with pure joy. Jung watches her, laughing a bit at how amazingly awkward her movements are. The shadow stares back at him with intense focus while Jung keeps looking right back, busy cooking up some brand new commands. Suddenly, she crosses her arms, ready to show off her social shaking ability. Acting like she is under the bright spotlights of a crowded dance floor, she strikes a dramatic pose. She starts clapping her hands to the beat of some imaginary song, basically cheering herself on like a pro. But then Jung feels a sharp headache coming on. His mind starts buzzing, making him wonder if he just imagined this whole crazy thing. Suddenly, a brilliant, strange light glows right from his chest. Right where that mysterious chip pattern is, Jung touches it, and instantly, the light shoots out, leaving him frozen in absolute shock. A massive yellow orb appears, looking like a miniature sun with dark letters and ancient hieroglyphs swirling inside. Slowly, a clear message begins to. The letter T sat clearly in the center of the ball, but its meaning remained a complete mystery. Suddenly, a system window popped up, showing a photo of the shadow alongside its various traits. It listed the creature's characteristics and abilities. Right now, it had only 1 point. Seeing these stats made him incredibly happy, since he could finally upgrade his new summon. He could boost the shadow's power. Soon, he spotted some plus signs at the bottom of the screen. Hoping to see what would change, Jang decided to tap on one of them, but nothing happened. Nothing, the system explained that the shadow existed solely because of him. It shared all of Jang's characteristics, but it lacked any form of independent consciousness. While the hero studied its stats, the shadow behind him started to dance. Noticing this playful movement, the young man was completely taken by surprise. Trying to wave his hand through the darkness, Jang wondered if it could speak. With glowing blue eyes, the shadow silently stared at him, keeping completely quiet. It simply waited for orders. Full of curiosity, Jang asked a direct question. He wanted to know if it shared his memories, hoping it retained his past abilities. Right on cue, the shadow gave a firm nod. This confirmed his guess. Rushing to his desk, the young man started waving his arms. He performed a series of strange actions, while the shadow watched from behind. After a few moments, the hero wrote down a long equation on a sheet of paper. He gestured for the shadow to come closer. Handing over the pen, Jang spoke up. This was his summer homework, and he hoped the creature could solve it. But he worried the shadow wouldn't even be able to hold a pen, doubting its physical abilities. Wrong. The moment it grabbed the pen, those doubts instantly vanished. Poking its head, Jang wondered if multiple entities were hidden deep inside it. This realization made him want to run a few more tests on his new companion. On the paper, the shadow simply wrote one word, decided. It then turned back to its master, silently waiting for instructions. Confused, Jang asked why it didn't write out the actual answer if it shared his mind. Once more, the shadow simply wrote the same word without showing any math. Tossing the pen aside, an annoyed Jang grabbed a rolled-up paper. He began swinging it wildly, trying to smack the shadow for being lazy, shouting that even he could solve that problem in just 2 minutes. Recalling its basic stats, Jang realized the math was simply too complex. A new test, he calmed down and asked it to draw a horse. The shadow focused, waving the pen to sketch a perfect horse on the paper before it. Deftly maneuvering the pen, it continued to draw with incredible precision. Watching in awe, Jang realized this talent could actually make them a lot of money. Talk about a useful summon, this shadow actually understood him perfectly. Pure talent, this new discovery made Jang even more intrigued. He turned back to the system window to study its other stats. Spotting a strange bite ability, he wanted to understand exactly what that meant. Opening up the details, the explanation made it clear how he could grow its power. He could increase its points by absorbing other shadows to level it up. Still a bit confused by this process, he wanted to touch an object's shadow. He wanted to see if his companion could actually absorb it and gain strength. He looked around cautiously, time to find a target. Jung walks over to the corner of the room and crouches down, watching his own shadow stretch across the floor. He reaches out a hand, wondering how to actually use it. He wonders what kind of power this skill will give him in the end. Opening his palms and holding his hands out, Jung decides to give the shadow bite skill a shot. He tries using it to buff his own shadow. Tensing his arms, he feels a weird tingling sensation. But nothing changes, everything around him stays exactly the same. Sweat drips down his forehead as Jung gets increasingly annoyed. Why are there 0 instructions for this skill? Then, a system notification flashes before his eyes. His eyes widen in complete shock at what the screen actually says. It claims his pupils have changed, and activating the power will unlock a whole new world. This ability will literally open up the dark side of the world right before him. Thinking back, it is hard to believe those monster-slaying warriors belong to that dark side. Looking down at his hands, Jung still feels a pretty strange sensation humming through them. Still, he decides to distract himself by testing what the shadow can do. Sitting quietly at the desk, his shadow just keeps drawing away. Jung tells it to take a break and do some push-ups instead. Hearing this, the shadow turns around. It looks completely baffled. It clearly has no idea why its master is interrupting its work, but as it stands up, the outlines of its limbs start to blur, turning into a strange dark mass. The shadow slowly melts away, sinking straight into the floorboards. It looks like some invisible force is sucking it down into a completely unknown abyss. Only a tiny black spark remains, and Jung yells out in total frustration. He demands to know where on earth his shadow went. Honestly, who can blame him? Night falls over the city, and the moon and stars light up the rooftops. Jung looks around his room, hoping his shadow will finally reappear. He calls out to it, demanding some kind of explanation for this disappearing act. Suddenly, a small dark whirlwind begins to spin right in front of him. It slowly reshapes itself back into his loyal shadow. The shadow floats down smoothly from the air, almost like it is testing its master's trust. Annoyed, Jung asks if it just ran away from him. He genuinely has no idea why it would pull a stunt like that. Grabbing a nearby notebook, the shadow scribbles down that it was visiting the dark side. Jung immediately shoots back. What on earth were you even doing over there? Tearing out a fresh sheet of paper, the shadow writes that it was doing those push-ups. It seems completely clueless about why its master is even complaining. Jung realizes that training the shadow on the dark side might actually be way better. With a simple wave of his hand, he tells it to get back to work. The shadow stares back with its glowing eyes wide, waiting for a direct command. It shifts slightly before completely vanishing right off the floor. Jung watches in surprise as the massive shadow shrinks down to a tiny black puddle. The drop fades away from his sight, leaving a pretty cold chill behind. Feeling a bit tense, Jung decides to keep busy while his shadow trains. He just hopes his partner returns soon with some pretty impressive results. Sitting down at his desk, he decides to finally get to work on his homework. He gets comfortable in his chair and spreads his notebooks out in front of him. Picking up a pen, Jung decided it was time to get to work without any distractions. He wanted to ignore the strange things happening to him. Soon, morning arrived. Warm sunlight filled the sky as white pigeons drifted past, creating a peaceful morning. Inside his room, a massive computer monitor sat completely dark on the desk. The screen was turned off. Jung had ended up passing out right there. He was still holding a pen in his hand, sleeping peacefully and laughing in his sleep. It seemed like he was having a great dream. Saliva slowly dripped from his mouth. He was probably dreaming of pretty girls, grinning widely, completely clueless about the world. Suddenly, a loud knock at the door startled him awake from his deep sleep. He rubbed his eyes, annoyed that someone was bothering him so early in the morning. His whole body felt stiff and heavy from sleeping in such a terrible position. He had been slumped over all night. Outside, someone kept pounding on the door. They called out his name and rattled the handle, clearly in a huge rush. Finally opening the door, Jung saw his childhood friend standing right outside, looking very irritated. It was Lu, and she was in a bad mood, just like always. But then Jung froze. He noticed a strange, bloody status bar floating above her head. He had never seen anything like this before. It was completely bizarre. The bar read 93%. Jung wondered why she was apparently losing health. He tried to figure out what was wrong. Then he glanced at the calendar. Jung immediately understood everything, realizing it was that time of the month. Girls go through this monthly. Completely ignoring him, Lu walked right into his room. She was staring at her phone, leaving Jung quite confused by her sudden early visit. Keeping her eyes on the screen, Lu told him to move faster and complained about his plans. She thought his ideas about starting a new business sounded totally ridiculous. Still scrolling, she asked Jung to explain more since she was somewhat curious anyway. Before he could answer, a loud bang echoed through the room. Lu jumped in fear, dropping her phone straight onto the floor. She turned to Jung and screamed, demanding to know why he had slammed the door. She snapped that they should just forget talking about business altogether, but look at the wall. The plaster above the doorframe was cracked, and the wood was completely splintered. Jung stared at his fist, unable to believe he possessed this level of power. He had smashed solid wood easily. Lu stared back at him, her eyes wide with shock. She could not hide her genuine amazement at the raw power he just displayed. He felt her staring. Jung turned around, still trying to process his weird new abilities. Something was happening to his body. His muscles felt absolutely packed with incredible energy. They had suddenly become firm and hard. Lu pointed a finger right at him. She asked if he had secret gym sessions because he looked completely different. Wait, she thought he got into shape overnight without ever working out. Clutching her head, she knew how much Jung hated training. Where did this come from? It made no sense. How did he build such massive muscles out of nowhere? She poked his arm, feeling the extreme density of his newly developed physique. His body felt as hard as solid steel. This was absolutely unreal. Getting annoyed, Lu demanded to know what he did and why he kept it a secret. Shrugging her off, Jung muttered that he just did a few standard exercises lately. Deep down, he knew that mere basic exercises could never explain this. Shadow training completely transformed him. Lifting his shirt, Lu spots rock-solid abs. She is completely shocked. This is impossible because they were never there before. Staring at his body, she is convinced that he is a complete fraud. Nobody gets a six-pack after just one workout. Speaking up firmly, she tells Jang she knows exactly how. Her father runs his shady business. It is not too late for Jang to stop everything. This highly annoys him, and he snaps at her too. Shut up, insisting he has no intention of doing anything illegal or dangerous. But with her long, sharp fingernails, Lu suddenly reaches extremely close to his chest as if to strike. Striking fast, she grabs his arm with a painful technique, making Jang cry out, fearing she has a weapon. But instead of a weapon, she pulls out a strange, glowing bracelet. It shines with a soft blue light, showing digital circuits on the screen. Snapping the band onto his wrist, Lu tells him to freeze, warning that it will measure his pollution levels. Staring intently at the bracelet, Lu explains that murder, deep resentment, and foreign entities are all parts of this contamination. Thinking of his shadow, Jang wonders if he is infected, but Lu warns that high levels trigger total corruption. Smiling slightly, Jang realizes his real power comes from the strange seal on his chest. Could it be useful? But suddenly, a violent electric shock pierces his entire body, hitting his chest directly. He does not understand this strange reaction at all. Turning around, Jang notices Lu is holding a gun. He panics. Is she actually going to shoot him? Gritting his teeth, Jang decides she absolutely cannot find out about his secret abilities. He has to stop this situation right now. Glancing down at the wrist device, he quickly notices that the screen is still processing, showing completely normal readings. Turning the gun over her hands, Lu notes there is no contamination on it. Smiling, Jang asks if she actually wants to shoot him. Feeling deeply relieved, Jang exhales and relaxes, realizing the danger has completely passed without issue. Lowering her weapon, Lu explains that her strict father taught her to be extremely careful and never trust anyone. Changing the subject, Jang asks if she wants to look at his sketches right now since they have some free downtime. Excited and highly impatient, Lu begs Jang to show them. She has always loved his incredibly unique art style. Heading behind closed doors, Jang asks her to carry the paint bottles, worrying they might leak and ruin his actual drawings. Annoyed, Lu demands to see the sketches anyway, and her loud cries echoes throughout the entire neighborhood. After a quiet moment, Jang finally collapses onto his bed, realizing exposure was close. Still, he managed to confuse Lu completely. Now, it is time to inspect his shadow stats. Opening the system interface, Jang looks closely at the displayed data. Watching his shadow power level rise, he is stunned by the massive stat increase. Looking closely at the screen, It actually shows his shadow lifting heavy weights to train. He figured she had been training hard all night, feeling strange sensations in his body. Jang grabbed his groin, trying to understand what was happening and what exactly was wrong. Suddenly, a small lump appeared on the floor, resembling a tiny black flame, and it slowly began to change shape, reaching out his hand. The young man saw his shadow appear and knew that he could feel the results of her long training sessions. Smiling, he remarked that push-ups alone would not be enough, suggesting they increase the difficulty of every single exercise. Eagerly expressing her agreement, the shadow fully supported the proposal to intensify their training program. Clenching his fist resolutely, the hero ordered the shadow to drop down and begin a long, grueling training session. With his arm outstretched, Jang began to command the shadow, forcing her to take different stances and jumps, and she obeyed without question, training silently and doing endless push-ups. While the guy gave commands, feeling pure pleasure from the training process, he enthusiastically continued to instruct the shadow, planning to increase the difficulty of the exercises to make them more intense. Meanwhile, behind the door, Lu stood listening to her boyfriend talk about an absolute close call. Holding an envelope in her hands, she stood eavesdropping from the hallway. She figured her friend was indeed training and that she had simply overthought everything. Smiling, Lu felt instantly relieved and quietly pleased, knowing her boyfriend was strong and that everything would turn out completely fine. She felt totally reassured about him. So the girl headed home, dreaming of reading her favorite comics and drinking some warm tea. Walking home after training, Jang recalled how his shadow first appeared. On January 20th, exactly 99 years after the cataclysm began, he realized that his body felt absolutely no soreness after training, only a sense of growing strength and surging energy. By the second day, he added even more exercises, and his muscles quickly became much more defined and stronger. Looking at his physique, he felt incredibly satisfied with the results he achieved. He accomplished all this without any real effort, slipping on training gloves and waving his fists. He thought he might even beat Lu with a single strike, but decided to train even harder. Just then, Uncle Lee from the night watch visited. He lost his arm in a past battle, but kept all of his old strength and confidence. A few days later, Jang realized he needed to work hard and build his own endurance, instead of relying entirely on his shadow. The next day, while the hero was casually scrolling through his phone, his shadow kept training hard and he loved it. Over the next few days, the shadow kept pushing her limits while Jang spent his time taking care of household chores. A week later, he decided to try some push-ups alongside his shadow, but quickly realized that the workout was incredibly tough for him. Checking the system data, Jang saw only 8 shadow points had accumulated, which is pretty disappointing, honestly. Bizarre, it displayed her shadow stats alongside his human stat points available for development. Judging by the slow progress, he realized it was going to be tough to earn enough points for the next evolution level. After thinking it over, he resolved to speed up he begins the transition by entering the dark world as a shadowy vortex rises around his feet. Sinking into the ground, the darkness slowly swallows his body, pulling Jang into this abyss. Half of his body is already on the other side now, but he feels zero panic. He calmly accepts his strange fate. Moment later, only a small flickering spark remains right where Jang was just standing there, marking his location. Plunging into the darkness, his entire body tumbles down like he is falling into a deep, endless abyss with no bottom in sight. Packed with sheer determination, the hero opens his eyes to see what lies in this creepy, silent space. Looking around, he realizes he is actually standing right inside his own room, except now it is completely covered in freezing shadows. Jumping up, the young man lands right on the cold asphalt in this strange, pitch-black city street, which he entered completely by choice. Staring up at the towering skyscrapers around him, everything looks familiar to Jang, yet somehow it feels totally alien and incredibly cold. With a smirk, Jang remarks that his crazy plan actually worked out, and he is honestly thrilled with his success so far in this bizarre dark world. The silent street around him is completely empty, with no other souls around. Among these massive skyscrapers, remembering how tough it was to escape his dark room, Jang knows that crossing over to this dark side required leaving the real world completely and utterly behind. Glancing in every direction to check out the empty buildings and parked cars, He notices that everything is a perfect, dark copy of the real world. As Jang walks down the quiet street, he realizes the local shadows are way too deep. And he completely misses the sinister figure creeping up from behind him. Vanish, the shadow kicks up dust as an eerie, thick tension fills the air around him. Sensing an invisible, hostile gaze, and honestly the dread is real here, Jang freezes. As a sudden chill of absolute dread washes over his entire body. He quickly realizes that these dark shadows are actively messing with his own head, and, forcing himself to be brave, he spins around with a very cocky grin. The young man asks if this beast came here just to make friends with him, the massive shadow bears a mouth of needle-sharp teeth, letting out a horrific growl before lunging. Closing the gap instantly, the beast catches Jang completely off guard. He did not see this coming at all, defenseless and trapped with absolutely no way to escape. Our hero curses, knowing this monster could easily tear him apart, grinning. With a terrifying, bloody smirk, the red-eyed shadow gears up for yet another lethal strike. With a single devastating swing, it sweeps Jang clean off his feet, and he staggers backward, desperately trying to keep his footing. Terror floods his entire system. The relentless beast quickly unleashes a rapid fury of powerful strikes, but Jang anticipates the moves and barely dodges. Now completely out of breath, Jang swears while contorting his body to evade each deadly swipe. Suddenly remembering his shadow emblem, he reaches out his hand to activate the device now to stop the next attack, but the monster looms right above him, draping its massive dark form like a shroud over the terrified boy. Diving straight toward the glowing center of his protective shadow emblem, Jang leaps high now. Desperate to escape this nightmare and leave the dark world far behind, his body tumbles back into the endless abyss, drifting in weightless, quiet silence for a moment. Without feeling a thing, then he slams onto the high-rise floor. Stumbling down the corridor, he shook. The fall was terrible. But he was back in reality, helpless, like a child. Pulling down his pants, he saw his backside covered in scrapes. The shadow attacks left painful abrasions, and clutching his chest, the young man trembled. He was scared to death. He had no idea what happened. He had no idea where that shadow came from or why it attacked. Seeing his torn jacket, he smiled. The shadow training made him agile. His body felt lighter, remembering how he grabbed a small folding stool earlier. Jang had gripped it tightly, desperately hoping it would save his life. Filled with determination, stool in hand, Jang refused to walk away. He recalled fighting that dark entity back on January 20th. He defended himself with a stool, but he lost the battle. Returning the next day for revenge, he only received a brutal counterattack. Talk about a brutal reality check. That chest blow nearly shattered his bones. Their next clash left 3 bloody, painful cuts on his backside. Yet despite the brutal beating, he survived. He managed to escape. Resting at home on January 31st, Lu patched up his wounds. Applying the healing ointment, the girl worriedly asked if Jang was fighting again. But her friend just smiled, saying that scars were a true man badge. Giving him a playful slap, Lu asked if he thought butt scars were attractive. Jang cried out in pain, shouting that it really, deeply hurt him. She scolded him, saying that if it hurts now, it means it is healing. Soon his body would recover completely, and turning to her, Jang spoke up. He noted there was only 1 month left, asking Lu about her plans. Confused by his words, she asked what was happening in 1 month. Sitting on the sofa, Jang reminded her about the upcoming big exam. There was only a single month left, asking if she had truly forgotten. Ever since the Great Disaster, most normal industries had completely crumbled. Creative arts and entertainment were completely dead, leaving artists as social outcasts. Society no longer accepted them, viewing their artistic values as totally useless. Nobody cared about plays or music in this ruined world. Instead, everyone watched brave warriors fight terrifying monsters on giant screens. Passing the martial arts exam to join the patrol would change everything. Sitting together, Jang and Lu quietly discussed their uncertain future. They talked about the chaotic world and the looming exam ahead. Gently wrapping his hand, Lu firmly stated she wanted no part in fighting. She refused to join the combat forces or flashy demonstrations. Pressing her lips together, she thought of her secret, cherished dream. A dream hidden for years, and after some thought, Lu finally confessed. She wanted to pursue music, even knowing that society would reject her. Surprised, Jang agreed she could, but warned her father might object. Her father, Uncle Lee, held immense influence within the Night Watch. But Jang believed she would still be safe under his shadow. Squeezing more soothing ointment from the bottle, she carefully tended him. Lu gently treated the rest of Jang's wounds, trying not to cause any pain. Sounding pretty annoyed, Lu said her father would never agree to it, and her friend Jang asked what she would do if he refused, while applying ointment to his wound. Lu quietly asked Jang not to tell anyone what she said, claiming that things in politics had changed significantly. Focusing on treating his wound, Lu said that absolutely anyone could apply to take the martial arts exam, even more surprised. Jang asked if Lu respected her own principles, since she could easily pass the test. Gently blowing on the wound, she said the pressure on the Night Watch was mounting, confidently stating she would definitely pass the exam. After thinking it over, Jang gradually came to understand that Lu had truly outstanding abilities, which perfectly explained her confidence. On the day of the exam, multiple devices were running, and Jang feared failing, especially with dangerous weapons present. Pressing his hand to his chest, he wondered if he would end up in a correctional camp if he failed. Suddenly, a brilliant idea struck him, and he asked Lu to lend him her detector. Without explaining what he wanted it for, quite confused, Lu said that he only needed it to find the others, and if he ran into them, Jang must run away. Surprised that she called them special, Jang asked for clarification. Lu calmly confirmed it. Lost in thought, Jang remained completely silent, while Lu watched him closely, waiting to see what he would do. Next, having finished treating his wounds, she was about to leave, but Jang said her family seemed to know a lot about those others. Lu grew nervous, realizing that Jang had actually decided to take the exam, but he just laughed it off and reminded her of what she had said. Surprised, Lu stepped a bit closer. Jang announced he would take the exam to make comics about others later on. Stunned by this, Lu demanded that he explain exactly what he meant. Jang instantly realized he had only said it on a random whim. While the wind rustled the curtains, he enthusiastically began sharing his wild ideas for those future comics with zero real intention of ever writing them. A guitar and a radio sat in the room, reflecting his musical side as Jang kept spinning his yarn about the fake comic book. Out in the hallway stood a massive shoe cabinet. With Lu's boots and Jang's shoes neatly placed nearby, everything looked quite organized. Jang passionately detailed the story of a ban, a soldier who served, until the others showed up, while Lu listened intently, inviting him. Inside, Lu opened her bedroom door and warmly gestured for him to enter, telling him to make himself right at home. With a gentle smile, she asked Jang to wait there while she headed over to her father's apartment, since their places were on the very same floor, decorated with colorful posters and soft toys. The space looked incredibly cozy and had a totally girly aesthetic. Everything was neatly organized in its spot, with the desk looking completely untouched for a while. Suddenly, Jang's eyes locked onto a rather interesting book lying right there on the clean desk, and the sudden discovery made him freeze right in his tracks. It was actually a comic book called The Fateful Void, resting right on the desk, looking quite out of place. Opening it up, Jang began scanning the pages carefully, asking Lu if she actually liked it. Swiping the book from his hands, she irritably snapped that she had never read it, claiming a friend. She left it right there. Walking out, Lu told Jung to sit tight and avoid touching anything. But Jung barely paid attention, casually waving his hand to brush off her warning. A quiet smile crossed his face. She was still the exact same girl, defenseless in a real crisis. Then his eyes drifted to a guitar nearby. He remembered how much Lu had loved music since they were kids. She used to beg him to listen with her. Now he approached the radio. He pressed the power button, letting a soft, bittersweet melody fill the room. This familiar tune immediately brought back a flood of childhood memories. He thought of his childhood with Lu, remembering all their funny adventures. A warm feeling washed over him. Lost in thought, he closed his eyes. He smiled peacefully, completely failing to notice when Lu walked back in. She asked how long he had liked music, making him rub his eyes. He woke up from his daydream as she walked over, pointing out his old habits. Music was something he used to hate, making this sudden shift thoroughly confusing. Skeptical, Jung asked if she had actually found what she needed from her father. Without a word, Lu tossed a pair of virtual reality glasses directly at him. Catching them, Jung put them on, hoping to discover secrets about the others. He still knew so little about them, but the screen showed only microchips. The raw circuitry gave him zero clues about what was actually recorded inside. Then the world around him began to warp and fade away. Now watch as he slips, slowly pulled down into a dark digital simulation. His entire body felt like it was plunging into a massive, endless cosmic abyss. There was no up or down, just quiet, empty space. He searched for others. Opening his eyes, he scanned the heavy silence with pure wonder. Suddenly, out of the deep dark, hundreds of glowing eyes stared back. They watched his every move. This virtual universe was absolutely stunning. The world of Shenhe was so hypnotic, he felt awe instead of terror. But then the others materialized right before his eyes. They slaughtered people, leveled cities, and slowly swallowed up reality. These beasts committed unspeakable horrors without a single care. Absolutely chilling, watching these heartless monsters, Jung felt a cold sweat. Trying to understand them, he suddenly remembered seeing these things before. Back when he was in the hospital, as he floated there in zero gravity. The system explained that a dark world existed, mirroring their own physical space. Monsters slipped through open rifts, occasionally breaking past the night watch. They breached reality. Suddenly, a strange light washed over Jung. He listened closely as the system broke down the secrets of the others. Suddenly, he was transported right next to massive skyscrapers. The voice explained that every 3 months, the shadow layer was shed. This process exposed the real world, allowing the others to slip inside. Though the layer weakened them, anyone below rank 4 was warned to stay out. Inside, visibility was incredibly low, barely reaching 3 to 5 meters. But if a fighter grew stronger, their vision would expand. The toxic contamination in this shadow layer was constantly shifting. This shocked Jung, since he had never felt any of these shifts before. As he studies the secret data on the others, a massive shadow looms behind him. Ready to strike, sensing a strange shift in the heavy air, Jang tenses up and slowly turns around, trying to peer into the pitch blackness. Suddenly, a blinding beam from above floods the shadowed creature, and Jang watches in complete awe, waiting for what comes next. This light agitates the beasts, and they snarl, glaring up at the source, slicing between the gloomy high-rise buildings. Arms crossed tight over his chest, Jang takes a combat stance, ready to face his enemies head-on at any second, knowing he can only defeat these monsters by completely mastering his hidden powers. Jang has no doubt he will succeed, refusing to let this chance to become special slip away. He resolves to stay in this dark world and fight rather than run away. Staring at the corpse of a special fighter, the boy wonders if he could ever become like that. If he somehow passes the brutal wrestling exam. After considering it for a moment, Jang realizes these elite beings are completely different, yet still human at their core, with minds that make hard choices, knowing special fighters can control their power. Jang realizes that this very energy is exactly why they die young. These special elites constantly battle the corruption enveloping their physical bodies and terrifying forms of decay. Even after they die, they will likely mutate into something else, since their bodies keep leaking a weird, toxic energy. When the fallen special fighters are covered in filth, they do not even realize that death is already stalking them, closing in fast, staring at the remains of these legends. The young hero freezes, trying to process this massive flood of dark secrets. Right then, an enormous beast rises before him, its eyes burning with blinding light. Not knowing his next move, the young man stands frozen, staring straight at the towering, terrifying body of the beast. But suddenly the video cuts out, the screen blinding him with a sharp flash before instantly going black, leaving only a blank screen, pulling off his virtual reality headset. Jang is completely blown away by the simulation, unable to hide a faint smile. Lu eagerly asks what he learned, but he tells her it is way too much to unpack right now. Rubbing his stiff neck, Jang asks Lu for a quick shoulder massage, making her scoff and tell him to say that again. Grinning, Jang promises to give her 3 original paintings, letting her pick whichever ones she wants. While kneading his shoulders, she smiles, saying she will gladly accept his incredibly generous offer since she absolutely loves art. Still, wondering why he is so tight, Lu asks what is wrong, and Jang admits his neck is killing him from intense training. Curious, she asks if he is working on his abs, and Jang lifts his shirt to show off his rock-hard six-pack. Right then, Uncle Lu appears in the doorway, scowling with intense anger. And yes, it was her protective father. Talk about awkward. They silently head to the Dinner table avoiding eye contact at all costs, silently chewing his rice. Jang can feel the suffocating tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. Fearing a blowout from Lu's father, holding back his temper, the uncle ate while Jang watched his aggressive, tense movements and broke a sweat, trying to calm her father down. The girl kept eating with a forced smile, saying he had misunderstood everything. Confused by his daughter's completely relaxed attitude, her father scowled and growled that his own eyes definitely were not playing tricks on him, shouting, "Lu," demanded. Interfering, raising a glass of some strange drink, Jang announced he would drink it all as a punishment, absolutely shocking everyone present by downing his glass in a single gulp. Father Lu and the girl herself could not understand the meaning behind his sudden action. Becoming even more annoyed, Father Lu asked if Jang really had reasons to punish himself. Lunging straight at Jang, the angry father began to search for a knife while his friend fled, making excuses. Meanwhile, Lu desperately tried to restrain her father. Jang had been close friends with Lu since childhood, though their raw personalities were radically different. He was a mischievous boy who always loved pulling pranks. Back then, Lu was sweet and diligent, her father's perfect daughter, always obedient and neat, unlike Jang. Jang's reckless actions made everyone keep their distance from him, but Lu was never afraid of him, always trying to stay close. Once, when Jang was still a child, he saved Lu and assumed that was the real reason she chose to be friends with him since childhood. Two strange boys began to bully Lu, but Jang immediately stood up for her, showing he was strong and ready to fight. Frightened by those bullies, the poor girl cried bitterly and called out for help, desperately hoping he could protect her from their ridicule, swinging hard to strike. The young boy proved his bravery, showing he was capable of standing up for his closest friends and protecting those he loved. Even when Jang pretended to be a vagrant, Lu stayed right by his side, holding up a sign for help. In those situations, onlookers always pitied the sweet girl, warning her to stay away and not be friends with him, while Jang was constantly criticized and harshly punished by adults. Lu's father never let her get too close to Jang, always keeping a wary eye on the boy. Years of friendship didn't matter. The man lit a cigarette, watching them with quiet suspicion. He watched them closely, trying to figure out their next move and their true motives. Her eyes narrowed in response, her annoyance mounting with every puff of smoke. She hated him smoking right in front of her. Lu marched right over and snatched the cigarette from his hand, showing zero hesitation. She wasn't backing down. Her father whirled around, his brow furrowing with sudden anger. He demanded to know what they were doing before he walked in, already suspecting trouble. Wave after wave of panic hit Jang as he frantically waved his arms to explain. He yelled that they were just looking up some special people online. Anything to get his strict dad off their backs. The father tensed up instantly. He stared hard at Jang, trying to read his face to see if he was lying. Meanwhile, Lu just giggled and stuck her tongue out, totally mocking the boy's panic. Just like their childhood pranks, teasing him like always. The father suddenly smiled and let out a long, quiet sigh of relief. The heavy dread was finally gone. He could breathe. Ready to share some crucial truths, he turned to Jang with a serious expression. Uncle Lu wears a serious expression, intending to teach him a lesson. Folding his arms, he asks Jang if he knows why students are kept in the dark. They are not allowed to learn about otherworldly entities yet, leaving Jang completely puzzled. The young man struggles to grasp the true meaning behind those mysterious words. Holding a cigarette, the older man explains that every human heart is different. When malice overrides good, knowing too much too soon can destroy a person. Jang gasps, his eyes flash wide at the cold, harsh truth. Still, he remains focused, absorbing every bit of wisdom from Uncle Lu. The commander goes on, explaining that very few possess real, unshakable willpower. Without it, these supernatural beings can easily drive ordinary people entirely insane. He warns that any emotional crack allows external forces to slip right inside. That vulnerability spells instant death. Jiang stays completely silent, absorbing the warnings. Uncle Lu reveals the deep purpose behind their brutal trials. Only the absolute strongest candidates are permitted to enter that terrifying shadow realm. It is a ruthless place, and grim visions of death flash before the boy's eyes. Violent, bloody ends play out in his mind. Talk about a brutal wake-up call. Modern medicine cannot save someone once they lose control of their mind. The old commander locks eyes with him, demanding to know if he truly understands. With a confident smile, Jiang nods, accepting his mentor's tough lecture. He stands firm. Jiang takes every single word completely seriously. Placing a hand over his heart, Jiang vows not to fail the upcoming exam. He promises there is absolutely no reason for his uncle to worry. Uncle Lu clenches his fist to argue, but a sudden ringtone cuts him off. But right on cue, a sudden ringtone disrupts their intense debate. It is an urgent call, summoning the commander to a fresh crisis in the shadow layer. Jiang watches silently as the older man absorbs the highly classified details. Confirming his receipt of the orders, Uncle Lu immediately moves toward the door. He must act fast. This emerging threat needs to be contained. Pausing, the uncle warns Jiang to stay in line if he wants to join the unit. Jiang just smiles, promising his future father-in-law that he will behave. Uncle Lu spits in pure irritation before storming out of the room, completely annoyed. Later, Lu Yao pinches Jiang's cheeks, demanding to know what they discussed. In response, Jiang playfully squeezes her face right back in childish retaliation. A new day dawns. Citizens walk peacefully through the streets. A happy kid rides high on his father's shoulders as they stroll along. While street vendors call out, the boy bites into sweet candied hawthorn berries. Eating the sugary skewer, he feels nothing but absolute joy beside his dad. Nearby, a massive billboard proudly displays the heroic faces of the Night Watch. Staring at these humanity-saving warriors, Jiang feels an intense urge to uncover their secrets. But public access is strictly limited, forcing him to settle for basic rumors. Sighing, he steps into a local grocery store to gather some daily supplies. While scanning the shelves, Jiang spots his favorite bottle of classic soy sauce. He grabs it, but his mind drifts back to his earlier irritating conversation. Judging by Uncle Lu's harsh reaction, information on alien entities remains heavily classified. But just as he drops another item in, get ready, because everything is about to change. His phone suddenly rings and Jang stops in his tracks to answer. It is Lu calling. She immediately starts listing more things she needs him to buy, sounding annoyed, but then she abruptly tells him to forget it. Jang heads over to the hygiene aisle. Realizing his friend was probably just too embarrassed to ask for sanitary pads. Our guy just smiles. He does not feel awkward about this at all. Quite the opposite, he is actually more than happy to help her out. Walking home with his groceries, Jang realizes only a month remains before graduation. Even worse, his intense shadow training is starting to lose its edge. The sky is clear as trees sway gently in the warm breeze. Everything seems peaceful, and yet Jang feels a deep lurking unease. Lately, anti-other propaganda has been ramping up like crazy day after day. Seeing so many rookies sign up for the brutal combat exam really frustrates him. He stops dead in his tracks, staring up at the sky in sudden disbelief. Talk about creepy, thick clouds roll in out of nowhere, revealing a massive moon. Darkness swallows the street. A heavy, terrifying sense of dread fills the air. Shifting his grocery bag, Jang decides he is just overthinking. He shrugs and stretches out his arms, swinging them around to loosen up. Jang abruptly veers off, turning the corner into a quieter back alley. He just wants to walk home in peace, without any noisy distractions. Out of nowhere, a dark shadow pools beneath his feet, expanding rapidly. Jang freezes, watching the black abyss grow. He knows something is wrong. A portal to a dangerous, monster-filled dark realm is opening right under him. His body begins to sink into the pitch-black void, dragged downward by the pull. But Jang does not panic. He simply accepts the danger and braces. Dropping into a dark world, he takes a fighting stance, feeling eyes on him. He demands to know who is there, shouting into the gloomy emptiness. Someone is lurking at the end of the alley, hidden deep in the shadows. No reply, then a figure slowly emerges from the pitch black. The scale above his head shows only 14% blood remaining. Jang realizes this stranger is in deep trouble. Just look at those wounds. Yet the wounded man keeps limping forward, heading straight toward Jang. His blank, blood-spattered face suggests he is trapped in some kind of trance. Unprepared for this, Jang quickly leaps back while clutching his shopping bag. He is terrified the bloody stranger is about to crash right into him. Squinting through the gloom, Jang recognizes the man as his next-door neighbor. He frantically asks what on earth the neighbor is doing in this nightmare realm. Without uttering a single word, the exhausted young man collapses right at Jang's feet. A blood-slicked metal pipe rolls away from the unconscious neighbor's body. Jang stares down in shock, desperately trying to make sense of this nightmare. He is completely stunned. He has absolutely no idea how to help. The poor guy has lost way too much blood and strength from his injuries. Slowly, the neighbor struggles to lift his head, trying to stand through the agony. That is when Jang spots a group of terrified children huddling nearby. They are weeping against a wall as a monstrous shadow creeps closer. The monster screeches horribly, and the boy hugs the girl tight to protect her. Determined to protect her as best he could, shocked by the sight, Jang froze in place. Realizing he had to stand up for those kids, floating right above the shadow's head. The indicator showed 24% blood, far more than the wounded boy had left. Rolling up his sleeves in pure anger, Jang prepared to launch an attack. He realized he had seen this shadow once before, and it had completely terrified him sometime earlier on the edge of the city. A night watchman sighed, deeply thinking about the massive workload piled onto them lately. As a civilian, he believed that working in the night watch was a truly honorable job, but as a result, he worked relentless overtime and regretted passing the exam. Suddenly, a sharp cry for help rang out from down the dark street, making the warrior freeze as he strained his eyes to find the source. A massive shadow was dragging a helpless boy and girl away while they screamed in terror, struggling to break free. But the grip of that dark dimension proved far too strong. Stunned by this, the rescuer wondered if someone was trying to drag the kids into that dark dimension, because in all his years of service, he had never witnessed anything like this. The dark vortex grew stronger, pulling the children deeper and deeper into the shadows, swallowing them into a bottomless abyss. Resolutely, the young man pushed off the ground with everything he had, leaping toward the kids to grab them. Before it was too late, he rushed to their rescue with all his strength, trying to latch onto the children's hands, but the dark force pulled them in even harder. At the very last second, he managed to grab one child's hand, feeling relieved that at least one kid was safe. But get this, the dark was just getting started to swallow both him and the kids, sending his heart racing with absolute panic. Now trapped inside this strange void, the young warrior felt a heavy, crushing pressure, struggling to comprehend what was happening while trying to keep his footing. Opening his eyes in absolute horror and shock, the desperate fighter braced himself, knowing that these dimensional beasts were completely capable of any horror. The warrior and children tried to recover from their rough landing, understand where they were while nursing the pain of their landing. Frustrated, he began to fear that this was the end, realizing he had been sucked into the dark world without a single weapon. Suddenly, a bizarre light pierced the void as a dark shadow emerged, making the children scream in terror. He refused to accept death, standing firm against the nightmare. This warrior was determined to fight to his very last breath, focusing on shielding the kids from the hungry darkness, swinging his legs in desperation. The young man tried to kick the shadow, but his blows slipped right through, proving his opponent was far stronger, slamming his boot against the beast's arm. The guard briefly dispersed the shadow, feeling a quick surge of hope. As the kids watched in absolute awe, the weary warrior suddenly felt the glowing breach in his chest vanish, accepting he might never return to his grim fate of being trapped forever. Looking around cautiously, he realized they were surrounded by countless hostile entities waiting to strike. As a massive shadow loomed before him, he bitterly thought he had lost his edge after spending too much time among civilians. Hearing the terrified cries of the kids behind him, his resolve hardened. Sobbing bitterly, the helpless children begged their mother for protection. They were terrified, completely lost, desperately seeking safety. Pressing his emergency bracelet, the young man knew his options were limited. All he could do was activate a beacon and pray someone received it. It lit up red, a sign the beacon was active. He desperately hoped the beacon would be spotted by a rescue team soon. Handing the device to the kids, the fighter told them to stay calm. It would shield them, protect them, he promised that. Deep down, he knew the tracker would not save his own life. Giving it to the kids was his only choice, leaving their fate to luck. As the young girl carefully examined the band, her brother looked up. He asked with wide, hopeful eyes if they were truly going home. He nodded. He promised to protect them, stay close. He told them to stay close, just as a massive shadow crept forward. It had glowing crimson eyes and a maw filled with razor-sharp teeth. Back when he was 18, he aced his exam and entered the academy. Right from the start, he trained relentlessly to lay a strong foundation. He dreamed of quickly proving himself and joining the legendary Night Watch. By his second year, he actually secured first place in active combat. The teachers were stunned. He was capable of greatness. Proud of his achievements, he rode high on life, expecting endless victories. But get this, high hopes do not last long in this universe. He soon learned that raw martial skill alone was never going to cut it. The powers other students possessed were far more complex than his own. In this brutal environment, simple hard work was not the top priority. Before long, his peers were easily completing high-level missions with ease. Fallen behind, desperate, he just kept on training. But success grew increasingly rare. Refusing to accept defeat, he pushed harder. He constantly pushed his body to the absolute limit in the gym. But he eventually hit an invisible wall that he simply could not break. Demoted, just an ordinary civilian watchman now. Faced with danger, he felt like he was confronting his own bitter reflection. Every single past disappointment came rushing back to crush his spirit once more. The snarling creature closed the distance, preparing to tear him apart. He froze completely, mind spinning. He just stared at the beast. Its sickening body had a half-human shape, crawling wildly on all fours. He quickly estimated that this monstrosity was only a mid-tier threat. Baring its massive fangs, the monster let out another guttural, threatening roar. Death was near. The young warrior clenched his fists. He had to protect those kids, even if this was his final stand. Suddenly, a massive explosion shredded blood and flesh. He stood there utterly confused, struggling to process what had just happened. But then another shadowy figure began to slowly close the distance. A sudden lunge he blocked in pure panic. He braced for the incoming blow, desperately preparing to strike back. Facing the beast, the warrior lightly lifts his heels, balancing on his toes. He launches skyward, delivering a heavy, direct strike. His fist smashes right into its face, total surprise. The beast growls in sheer annoyance, totally caught off guard. Who knew a human could hit that hard? The young hero grins. He knows that hit was absolutely perfect, and confidence starts rushing back into his chest. But wait, the beast's sudden counter leaves him completely frozen in shock. He cannot even raise a guard. In an instant, a massive arm swings. The monster flings him aside with raw, terrifying force, giving him zero breathing room. Crash slammed against the wall, the warrior struggles to get back up. He tries to recover, while other threats circle menacingly in the air above. Cursing under his breath, he tries to move, but his limbs just will not cooperate. His body is lagging way behind his reaction speed. The monster closes in again. A brutal sweep aims straight for his legs, but he barely manages to jump. Somehow he keeps his balance, desperately weaving through the incoming strikes. He is dodging for now, but he knows his stamina is running dangerously low. Cold dread starts creeping in. It is not just his own life on the line. He has to protect those kids, but right now, the odds look incredibly grim. As he retreats, a heavy numbness takes over, feeling like 1,000 sharp needles. Complete paralysis, the invisible weight restricts his every move. Luckily, the spider-like creature is slow, letting him buy a little time. He manages to scramble back to a safe distance and tightens his fist. No more running, he has to change his strategy to survive. Opting for direct, close-quarters combat, he swings with everything he has left. He pours his remaining power into a strike, trying to blind his foe. Suddenly, a wall of pure shadow rises, creating a thick barrier right between them. His attack hits nothing but empty air. The monster just used an ability. Sensing its absolute victory, the creature lets out a deafening, triumphant roar. But the warrior swings wildly, somehow connecting with a lucky, desperate hit. The impact forces the beast down, throwing off its balance for a split second. Absolute agony tears through the young man. The corruption is spreading fast. Low-rank hunters like him simply cannot handle using power for this long. Recovering quickly, the beast bares its razor-sharp teeth once again. It unleashes another terrifying shriek, enough to paralyze anyone with fear. It closes in, the monster readies itself to end this. Watch closely. If he does not risk it all now, they are dead. There is no future for him or the children if he holds back. He forces his power to ignite, and a blinding flash consumes the entire room. But the sheer backlash of his own energy immediately ravages his insides. He coughs up blood, feeling his strength drain away with every second. Down he goes, he collapses, blood spilling from his mouth. His battered body screams in agony, making it impossible to even stand. After a brutal impact, he is sent rolling across the floor. Every single bounce against the hard stone floor makes his critical injuries even worse. Gasping for air, he realizes the beast has already adapted to his style. And his old strategies, totally useless now, as the beast crawls closer. The boy thinks any combat major could have ended this fight in seconds. But for him, a guy with absolutely zero talent, it is a different story. He swings again, knowing deep down he doesn't stand a chance. Still, he refuses to back down, desperately searching the monster for a weak spot. Cruel, heavy blows rain down, breaking his bones, but he forces himself upright. He just needs to buy time, praying someone received his emergency signal. Behind him, the kids are huddled together, their eyes wide with horror. Shivering and fearing the worst, but looking back at those weeping faces. The guard feels a sudden spark. Pain does not matter anymore. Gritting his teeth, he searches deep inside for any scrap of energy. He drags himself up, absolutely refusing to leave these children undefended. But the monster lands a devastating hit, knocking him completely off balance. As he hits the dirt, he feels his life force rapidly draining away. Flat on his back, he cannot accept that this is the end. He tries to stand, gathering every single ounce of his remaining energy. In a puddle's reflection, he sees a stranger staring back at him. Is he dying? Absolute dread washes over him, freezing his entire body. Then he remembers, at 15, his entire family was slaughtered by monsters. That burning nightmare is the exact reason he chose to pick up a weapon. At 18, he threw himself into brutal martial arts training to defend himself. He had high hopes for a peaceful, bright future at the university. But reality is cruel. By age 20, his expectations were completely shattered. Expelled during his second year, any chance of normal study vanished instantly. At 21, he joined the Night Watch unit as a simple civilian. He kept reading, desperately striving for any knowledge that could help him. For 100 years, humanity has fought these beasts without a single moment of peace. Everyone just prays they will retreat, giving mankind a tiny chance to survive. Death is normal now. People lose hope and simply stop trying to fight back. But Watch, he refuses to accept this fate. He makes his decision. Stealing his resolve, he reaches deep into his pocket. Taking out a blue capsule, he prepares to boost his power. The boy tosses it into his mouth, staking everything on one final gamble. His eyes snap open, pupils glowing a venomous, toxic purple. If he is going to die today, he is going out swinging. He forces his broken body to stand, bracing for the ultimate showdown. A strange blue light wraps around him, stitching his shattered bones together. The beast stands frozen, warily studying this sudden surge of energy. Feeling raw power flood his veins, the young guard plans his next move. He focuses, trying to anticipate the creature's next strike. He wipes the fresh blood from his chin, knowing the fight continues. Round 2 has officially begun, and he will use every ounce of this borrowed power. Slowly, he steps toward his enemy. The beast clenches its massive fists, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Fueled by sheer rage, our hero lets out a roar and charges forward. He knew that if he missed this chance, he and the kids would die. Leaping up, he managed to dodge the deadly strikes from the shadow creature, which swung its long, lethal arms. With one precise kick, the young warrior managed to sweep the beast off its feet and inflict massive damage, leaving it completely dazed. That devastating impact sent the massive monster flying back to the ground as it roared in fury, but the young man had no intention of letting up, pressing the attack with his hands glowing in bright blue fire, showing the full extent of his awakened strength as he concentrated energy to pummel the monster with relentless strikes to the face. The young warrior felt a rising surge of raw power and satisfaction seeing his attacks land, eyes blazing with fury. He knew he had to strike even harder, pushing past his absolute limits, without halting his relentless headshots, which made the dazed creature shriek in agony. The fighter tried to deliver the final blow, but his strength was rapidly fading, and his head spun wildly. His strikes turned sloppy as the monster loomed closer, ready to unleash a crushing counterattack. Staring at his trembling hands, the warrior realized he had to dig deep to win and shield those kids from absolute disaster. His body was covered in bloody cuts and his weak legs felt completely like jelly, yet he fought on, sensing an opening. The shadow monster lashed out with its massive hand, and the exhausted teen was unable to dodge the heavy strike. It landed with a loud crash, sending dust flying. The kid was thrown back, gasping in agony, but instantly preparing to jump right back into. The action, blood dripped from his head, making him realize his raw skills were not enough to win. For a split second, his vision went totally black. Bleeding heavily from the wounds, the warrior felt incredibly angry that even with the stat enhancement pills, he could not win, frustrated by his own weakness. Believing this was the end of his ordinary life, he sank into deep despair. Suddenly, a calm voice from the side made him snap out of it. Peering out of nowhere, Jang asked anxiously what was going on around here. He stared at the bleeding fighter, quickly assessing the scene. Lying in a pool of blood, the injured kid wondered who this mysterious savior actually was. Maybe a night watch officer or an elite. Walking closer, the stranger grabbed his shoulders firmly, telling him to calm down, relax, and gather his strength. Just rely on me, Jang said with a slight smile, rubbing his palms. Still holding a bag of groceries, bracing himself for the upcoming, dangerous battle ahead. Now watch closely. As the wounded warrior watched closely, he suddenly saw a shadowy opponent punch Jang right in the face. This newcomer was connected to the dark dimension. Jang's body was thrown violently aside by that sudden, powerful strike. He hit the ground with a dull thud, kicking up thick dust, shocked. By the display, the wounded soldier thought Jang was incredibly weak, just another civilian who had zero chance of surviving a real fight. Meanwhile, the fierce clash between Jang and the shadow enemy raged on. The injured soldier gathered his remaining strength, took a deep breath, and dragged himself up, feeling a strange, new energy within. The young fighter blindly swung his arms around in all directions, hoping to land a lucky hit. Seeing the warrior stand up, the enemy slowly approached and stopped right in front of his desperate, blind attacks. He flailed his arms. After a few desperate attempts, the kid actually landed some blows, hitting the beast's chest and slowing it down. This sudden development only pissed off Jang, since he wanted to take the monster on himself. Eager to test his strength against a real threat, grabbing a soy sauce bottle from his bag, he glared at the parasite and made his declaration of war. The moon broke through the dark clouds, bathing the entire street in a strange green glow that gave the warrior an eerie, ghostly look. The brutal clash raged on as Jang faced the beast, holding his bottle in a death grip. Even as the monster lunged, he needed an edge, so he shattered the bottle on the ground to create a jagged weapon. Buying himself just a few precious seconds, the young man spun round to snatch up the sharpest shard for his attack. Meanwhile, raising its massive spider-like limbs, the creature let out a terrifying roar, showing off its raw power before turning its back on the fighter. It raised its limbs one by one as Jang crept up from behind. Holding the glass rose, he drove the jagged shard deep into the beast's back, forcing a painful shriek from the creature as it staggered. Unleashing a barrage of chaotic strikes, Jung watched closely, figuring out the monster's attack patterns. Delivering heavy, dull impacts, the warrior shredded the beast with his makeshift weapon, moving fast to systematically wear his opponent down. Screaming in agonizing pain, the creature let out a high-pitched screech that shook the surrounding buildings. Then, a massive impact sent the beast crashing to the side, where it glared back while trying to rise. From the sidelines, the observing warrior realized this thing was far from finished and that this street fight had absolutely no rules left. Lunging forward to grab the creature's throat, Jang closed the distance, shouting that it was finally his turn for payback. Suddenly, a blinding flash of pain shot through him as his eyes went wide. The beast had caught him off guard with a swift, clawed strike. Knocked clean off his feet, Jang crashed heavily into a brick wall, leaving a deep crack. Coughing up dust, he cursed his own stupid mistake, knowing he should never have tried the exact same attack twice. The monster snarls, completely locked on him and readying another strike, its glowing red eyes burning with absolute rage. Glancing at the terrified kids, Jung knew he had to keep the creature away from them. Staring at the young man, the hero knew that if they fled, now the parasite would tear them apart. Tightening his grip on the broken glass, the warrior resolved to finish this fight right here. Tracking the fight, Jung yelled out that the creature's right rib was heavily damaged, and that was exactly where he needed to strike. Moving like a streak of lightning, Jang roared in response, completely locked in as he charged forward with absolute, wild fury. Blinded by his insane speed, the creature could only stand there and watch him close the distance. Grinning, Jung felt a massive surge of inner power, fully prepared to put this beast down for good, even if it cost him his life. moving like a ghost, the young man dodged the deadly blows, appearing on one side of the monster's massive body, then the other. Creeping up to the beast's head, our hero raised a broken glass bottle high, preparing to strike a devastating blow to the back of its head, bleeding heavily and howling in absolute agony. The monster let out a piercing shriek, terrifying the poor kids hiding nearby. Sensing its strength slip away, the beast backed away slowly, but Jang stood his ground, gripping that jagged broken bottle completely unfazed, confused by this opponent's bizarre action. The beast must have thought this weak human was finally trying to flee. Instead, the beast bolted right past the hero, leaning against the wall, surging forward. As the stunned fighter scrambled to track its path, that's when he realized the monster's true target. It was heading straight for those helpless kids, making him scream at the top of his lungs, ordering the beast to stay away from them. But as the giant mutant closed in, the kids huddled against the dirt, desperately trying to hide from its terrible wrath. Bearing its razor-sharp fangs, the creature crouched low, winding up to pounce on the helpless children. This terrifying nightmare inched closer and closer as they shook with absolute horror, trapped and completely frozen with nowhere left to run. Lunging right at the little boy, the monster opened its gaping maw, revealing a swirling, pitch-black abyss deep inside. Sensing their imminent demise, the kids broke down in hysterical tears, while the creature's massive fangs snapped together, ready for the killing blow. Just as its deadly claw reached out to grab the boy's face, a loud voice echoed, "Stop right there," summoning every ounce of strength. Jang desperately dug through his grocery bag, searching for anything heavy to throw. Finally, his fingers wrapped around a single can of soda, pulling it out. He swung his arm with everything he had and launched it at the beast. It was a desperate final gamble, throwing the can with all his might, just to draw the mutant's focus away from those kids. Talk about a desperate move. The can hurtled toward the creature, picking up speed and whistling sharply through the wind as if it were a high-tech projectile sent to save the kids. But when it hit, the can bounced harmlessly off its thick hide, doing absolutely zero damage. While Jang made his throw, another fighter struggled to his feet, bracing for an attack. He was ready to risk everything to finish his mission. Watching this from the side, Jang clenched his teeth in frustration, hating how helpless he felt to protect them. Suddenly, the main character leaped forward, charging head-on to destroy the beast. No matter the cost, even if it meant his own death. Despite his bleeding wounds and injuries, the young man kept fighting, fueled only by his desire to protect them. Landing a heavy strike to the chest, our brave soldier managed to hit the mutant, pulling its attention away from the children as the beast roared in sheer pain. Twisting violently in midair, the creature slammed the fighter hard against the cold ground, knocking the wind right out of him as his vision began to fade. His health bar was flashing red, dropping dangerously close to zero as death loomed near. Coughing up a pool of fresh blood, he felt the chill of defeat creeping in. He knew he had absolutely nothing left in the tank to continue this fight. Spitting blood in the hero's face, the vicious mutant prepared for the final strike. It bared its teeth greedily, raising its clawed paw to finish him off. Drooling saliva over sharp fangs, the beast slowly approached with its massive mouth open. It tried to grab the weakened young fighter, completely failing to notice the danger behind. Jang jumped up from behind, grabbing it by the head with a dark smirk. The soldier locked his grip and shouted furiously, demanding that it finally die. No more tormenting the children. Enraged, Jang bit down hard. His teeth sank into the creature's neck, making the monster gasp and freeze in terror. The mutant lost strength rapidly from the bloody assault, and its health bar plummeted. It dropped to a pitiful 14%. Grabbing the beast, the warrior threw it. He slammed it down, pinned it completely so it couldn't move. Kicking his opponent relentlessly, Jang rushed forward, forcing the beast to back away. It whimpered like a defenseless dog as its health dropped lower and lower. Now at 11%, the enemy grew weaker. Jang decided to end it up close. He delivered devastating blows with his heavy fists, tearing the enemy to shreds. Bright fiery circles flared up with every single strike he managed to land. The creature howled in agonizing pain as the hero relentlessly pushed his attack. With absolute fury, Jang continued the brutal beating, determined to finish it off. He had no intention of stopping until it was dead, trying to break free. From his deadly grip, the creature growled and writhed, but escape was impossible. Jang's next blow struck the beast squarely in the eye, making blood spurt out. Warm crimson stained his hands bright red, Fearless, the warrior wanted to end this. He wanted to finish the fight quickly, before the mutant could even recover. Slowly, a strange energy burst from the mutant's body as Jang kept striking from above. Near the end, the colliding powers mixed around them, transforming the entire battlefield into a massive, glowing, chaotic mess. With his final strike, Jang split the monster right in half. It let out one final roar, then silence. Life was gone. Hot blood from the defeated enemy drenched Jang's face and chest as he gasped. He gasped heavily, trying to recover, but the brutal clash was sending surrounding rocks to shatter and crash down as if the earth itself was crumbling beneath their feet. Barrels and trash flew into the air, and a strange black shadow suddenly began to swirl under Jang like a whirlwind. The raging energy of the vortex sent loose stones and cans flying. They whipped through the air before hitting the ground with heavy, dull thuds. Unable to withstand the raw power, the solid asphalt cracked wide open. Dust and sharp grains of sand swept wildly across the empty street. Nearby, the children and soldiers watched the scene unfold, completely unable to believe their eyes. Finally standing up, Jang exhaled deeply after the fight. Blood still dripped down his face, staining his chin. With a tired smirk, he announced that he had finally gotten revenge for all of their suffering. The kids were safe, but suddenly consciousness began to fade away fast. Everything before his eyes started to blur and float in a dizzying haze. The ground seemed to vanish beneath him as his head spun out of control. He blindly reached his hands out into empty space, trying to find his balance. Suddenly, right before his eyes, that same ominous black shadow returned. But right then, a pitch-black shadow pooled beneath the young man's feet. Just then, both the dark attribute and his dark world clone materialized together. His eyes slowly slipped shut, yet the shadow lingered, waiting for him to finally give up. Fighting to open his eyes, the last thing Jung saw was a strange, incomprehensible detail hidden in the dark. Suddenly, fire engulfed the streets, twisting the metal traffic lights and sending sparks flying everywhere. As the heat grew unbearable, massive buildings erupted into flames like giant torches, crumbling under the relentless fire, while smoke and ash choked the air. Over the lifeless bodies of the fallen, fresh blazes erupted across the city, spreading rapidly to consume everything in their path. Right in the middle of this ruin and ash stood Jung, completely stunned to find their meeting spot destroyed. He couldn't understand how everything had changed so fast. Then, suddenly, something strange caught his eye, a faint shifting in the shadows. Nearby, cutting through the eerie, suffocating silence of the ruins, turning. Quickly, he realized a horde of silent, moving shadows was wrapping around his body, slowly filling up the entire space. Their glowing red eyes pierced the gloom. The beasts growled, bearing their sharp fangs in it. Became chillingly obvious he was facing the others, their terrifying paws lunged forward, claws slicing through the empty air, yet they did not strike, almost as if they were testing his resolve. Suddenly, the young hero felt an intense, strange pull right beneath him, like a heavy weight dragging him down and forcing him to look. A bottomless, dark abyss yawned open beneath his feet, starting to swallow his body whole. Jung, desperately resisting, screamed out for help, but the swirling vortex of the void sucked in not just him but everything around. Shattered stones and wall debris were dragged into the massive, roaring whirlpool, while the fierce flames kept raging. Fresh fires burst through the city, and his entire world slowly turned into pure chaos. The sun vanished, replaced by a suffocating void that completely engulfed the land, crushing any last hope of survival. Suddenly, familiar voice snaps Jung awake, making him realize that all of this was nothing but a terrifying nightmare from losing consciousness. The dead body of the fallen other still lay on the ground, and he, gasping for air, tried to compose himself, quickly assuring his worried ally that he was all right. Looking at the vanquished foe, Jung suddenly realized his memories of the fight were entirely cut short. But when he poked his finger directly into the monster's eye, he noticed the terrifying shadow actually had a pair of real pupils hidden deep inside. Flooded with relief, the young man smiled, feeling a quiet surge of pride at his victory despite the sheer horror. Standing nearby, a puzzled Jang asked if he was all right, wondering why Jung was being so silent. The entire situation felt incredibly eerie, but checking the system logs, Jang is shocked to see his friend had lost massive blood and yet survived. Suddenly, Jang grabs him by the shoulder, making him turn around. With a confused look, completely lost as to what was wrong. Pointing to some nearby buildings, Jang suggests they find a solid wall to rest up and finally catch their breath, totally exhausted. And out of energy, they slump against the stone, letting exhaustion wash over them. And drain their remaining strength, turning to his companion, the young man. Asked if the stranger belonged to the night watch, since his power was so unusual. Smiling, Jang chuckled. How could they possibly forget him when they had lived in the same building and crossed paths constantly on the street, closing. His eyes quietly, he admitted he belonged to no faction. The young man fell quiet, lost in deep thought. Smiling, the warrior remarked that Jang was way too powerful, making it hard to believe that Jang was actually just some ordinary civilian. He laughed, saying the actual guards were legendary. But Jang shrugged it off, reminding him that he had just risked his life. To save him, the fighter praised Jang, admitting his skill was absolutely shocking and highly impressive in a real fight. Suddenly, the soldier started waving his arms, while laughing like a maniac, prompting Jang to ask if he was okay. Laughing now, he could not fathom it, but he had to admit. The watchman had some serious power. Still, he decided not to say anything. To avoid arguing, curious, the soldier asked where Jang actually studied and what his major was. Deciding to lie, Jang claimed he was currently in his second year at Webtoon University, but the constant questions about his major only made Jang feel increasingly awkward and tense. After reflecting for a moment, the young soldier guessed that Jang was enrolled in the martial arts faculty. Suddenly raising a hand to his lips, the companion asked for a quick cigarette, pretending he just wanted to relax. Jang reached into his pocket and pulled out a box of cookie sticks, joking that these were the only smokes he had. He snapped one of the sweet sticks in half, gently sharing the pieces with the soldier, who held his portion just like a real cigarette. After taking a bite, the young fighter grumbled that it was not nearly enough, but pretended to be satisfied, pointing to the treats scattered on the floor. Jang explained that he had bought a whole bunch, but they all shattered during the battle, leaving them to make do with crumbs. With their mouths full of sweet snacks, they sat slumped against the wall, pretending to smoke. Honestly, you have to love how they can laugh after such chaos. Soon, the soldier asked if this was the very first time Jang had defeated an enemy alone. He nodded. The young soldier sighed heavily in response. He admired them, their intense discipline, their martial arts skills, and their legendary power. Under the moonlight, he cursed his own pathetic skill, feeling hopeless next to true masters. Nearby, the massive high-rise loomed in pitch darkness. A suffocating, heavy silence hung in the air, reminding them of the chaos. Deep in thought, Jang finally broke the silence, telling the soldier to stay quiet and save what little energy he had left until help arrived. But the stubborn guy refused to quiet down, arguing that ordinary people rarely got to fight, covering his tired face. With both hands, he whined about his weakness, staring at his dirty bandages. He noted that even a partially contaminated zone was incredibly tough. Jang was surprised. He asked if the young student regretted his path and how a humanities major ended up on this dark, dangerous path. Clenching his fists in sudden rage, the guy struggled to find the strength, telling himself to stand up and stop whining, proving his resolve. Getting to his feet, he muttered in annoyance that he deeply regretted this mess, but he still accepted his fate. Sobbing, the main character started to explain that he had been brutally kicked out of the martial arts department, which forced him to choose humanities instead. Choking on his tears, he coughs as Jang carefully tries to soothe him, telling him to just rest up after such a major breakdown. Gesturing toward the helpless kids, the soldier explained he sent out an emergency rescue signal hours ago, hoping that rescue forces would arrive before it was too late. Clutching the transmitter bracelet, the kid lies flat on the ground as a red arrow points directly to the active alarm, designed to call for help. Gripping the device with everything he has, the kid refuses to let go, knowing this tiny tracker is his absolute last hope of getting out alive. As Jung turns to leave and bids him a final goodbye, the desperate young man grabs his arm, pleading to keep talking just a bit longer. Our hero knows he has to leave, but here is the sad truth: he is simply sick of talking and desperately wants some quiet peace before the next brutal fight. Under the dark sky of the ruined city, the boy begs him to stay. Desperately wanting to share a personal story, flexing his massive biceps, the proud fighter bragged about his legendary courage and past glory. Meanwhile, Jang sits right next to him, barely tolerating the endless chatter. Still, he keeps bragging endlessly. Shio listens half-heartedly. This chat is just completely pointless. It leads absolutely nowhere. Laughing, the loud young man asks Shio to tell director Joe of extraordinary technologies that his lessons were totally useless. Clutching his head, Jang stays silent. He actually lied about having a college degree because, in truth, he only ever attended a regular school. Once more, he asks that his deepest thanks be sent to cultural director Huang for his high-level training. Suppressing his growing annoyance, Shio asks if he should grab a notebook to write all these thank you notes down, or just do it himself. Completely confused, the boastful fighter stares at Chang, not getting his attitude, quickly playing it off like nothing happened. Trying to explain his strange behavior, the highly emotional youth says he has been carrying this heavy burden alone and just wanted a real friend to talk to. Peacefully, smiling softly, he looks back at the bittersweet memories of his past, feeling a very deep sense of nostalgia. With a sad smile, the weary soldier mentions the military academy, thinking it would be wonderful to go back and study in that quiet environment once more. Holding out his hand, the guy asks if they have any chopsticks, begging Jang to pass him just a few more of those dry cookies so he can pretend to smoke. Smiling, Shai notices his new friend actually loves the snacks and watches him closely, still holding out his hand. The boy waits patiently for Jang to hand them over, closely tracking his every move. Leaning against the wall, the youth quietly tells Shio that he can just ignore his silly rambling. Suddenly, faint voices echo from the far end of the dark street, and a bizarre energy crackles in the air around them, instantly shifting the mood. Whipping around toward the noise, the soldier word has it that the night watch is finally drawing near, making Jung turn round in utter surprise. Shio happily remarks that they can save the soldier and sighs with deep relief that she won't have to endure any more tedious conversations. Grabbing her bag of groceries, she prepares to make her quiet exit, clutching her belongings as she starts walking down the city streets. With her bag in hand, she heads down the sidewalk, leaving the soldier leaning against the walls staring after her with intense eyes. Shocked by her sudden departure, the warrior asks if Jung will stay to guarantee they make it to their next destination. Turning back with a smile, she tells him that he will return safely on his own, choosing to be cautious. Hearing this, the young warrior simply sighs, slightly annoyed that his new acquaintance is leaving so soon. But he accepts the choice calmly. After a brief, quiet pause, the soldier wishes her a safe journey, offering his deep respect and hoping they both make it back safely. Saying goodbye, Jung finally turns around, thanking the young soldier for the brief time they shared together. Slowly, the distance between them grows as both face their own paths, a head filled with danger and heavy trials. As Shio walks away, Jung sinks into his own thoughts, waiting for the backup night watch team to arrive. Suddenly, a strange dark shadow circle begins to form right under his feet as the hero prepares to return back to reality and leave this dark world. Turning back one last time, Jung prays that the soldier and children will be safe, feeling deeply responsible for their survival. Thankfully, help arrives and a guard calls out that they have successfully located their comrade and the two lost children. As they check the soldier's vitals, Shio slowly fades into the dark portal, leading straight back to reality. Examining the warrior, the squad realizes he has only 10% of his blood left, signaling extreme danger. One of the masked guards looks over at his teammates, completely lost as they desperately try to figure out their next move. Suddenly, he sees something that makes his eyes widen and his heart freeze. In fear, just like that, the soldier's blood level drops to 9%, and the situation spirals out of control, demanding immediate medical action. In seconds, it plunges down to 7%, horrifying Jung as he watches as he is pulled further into his portal. He sees the brave soldier's body start to dissolve, realizing he is dying. The surrounding guards watch in absolute shock as a bizarre light begins to envelop the dying warrior. Knowing there is no hope, they decide to honor him. Seeing this, Jung desperately reaches out to grab the dark world with his bare hand, but the soldier's vital stats hit 0, leaving no chance of saving him. Yet in his final moments, the soldier looks peaceful, showing a faint joy as a mysterious glow wraps around his body. Gradually, his physical form fades into the glowing abyss, as if ascending to heaven. As the entire space is filled with sacred light, paralyzed with shock, Jung, who is still trapped halfway inside his own portal, watches his loyal comrade fade. Thrashing his arms, he screams in absolute agony, trying to halt the return Back in the real world, Jang desperately tried to find a way to save his friend. Reaching into the empty darkness, he strained with all his might, but nothing worked. Cold despair slowly swallowed his mind, then his eyes snapped open. He was standing in the middle of a busy city street, hands still stretched out. Desperately reaching for a friend who was already gone, he stood frozen. Confused passersby stared and whispered, assuming he was just some street actor, rehearsing some bizarre role in public. When he finally realized where he was, Jang felt a wave of intense embarrassment wash over him. He looked totally ridiculous. Just then, an alert popped up on his system screen. Night Watch Captain was issuing a stern reminder to all awakened users. They had to remember their mission. Hearing this, Jang froze. Standing in the crowd, he realized his normal life was officially over. On screen, a battle-hardened officer held up a glowing capsule. He warned that no one should ever give up, even when death is staring them down. Explaining the brutal side effects, the captain urged the team to be cautious. Mistakes meant instant death. It was their duty to honor the fallen. The Night Watch had to stand united and keep pushing through. They had to keep their guard up, believing a brighter tomorrow was waiting. A hard-earned peace at the end of a long road, Jang headed for the elevator. Riding up to the 8th floor, he was completely lost in his own thoughts. Clutching a bloodstained bag, he tried to process that terrifying shadow realm. How did an ordinary guy like him end up in the middle of this chaos? It felt completely unreal that his neighbor was gone so suddenly. Taken in a flash, leaving only ghosts, the elevator chimed. The doors slowly slid open. Jang stepped out, feeling a crushing weight in his chest as he walked. He remembered the soldier joking around, unable to believe he was dead. As he slowly slid his key into the apartment door lock, he kept replaying their very last conversation. The deceased soldier probably just wanted to talk to someone one final time. Slowly turning that brass key, Jang realized his neighbor had slipped away in total silence. He never liked drawing any unnecessary attention in reality. Pushing the door open, he realized it no longer mattered what kind of person he was. Unusual or totally ordinary, none of it mattered now. He was gone. Stepping inside, Jang realized that no matter how hard he tried, this night would haunt him. The soldier's brave sacrifice was permanently burned deep into his memory. A sudden, agonizing headache pierced his skull, making him realize just how exhausted he truly was. The brutal combat had completely drained his strength. Carefully setting the bloody bag on the table, Jang decided a hot bath was desperately needed. He stepped up to the mirror and froze, staring at his blood gauge. It was still half full, which was shocking since he felt like he bled out. He remembered his neighbor only had 10% left. Could he be saved? Pushing the thought aside, Jang pulled some sausages and instant ramen out of the fridge. He desperately needed to refuel his physical body. Looking at his simple meal, he knew survival required more than raw power. You needed unyielding mental fortitude to stay alive in this dark reality. He could barely stand, completely drained. Suddenly, a voice behind him asked about the eggs. Jung dropped the food. He could not believe someone else was in his apartment. Lu sat on the sofa, demanding to know why he ignored her calls. She thought her friend had headed to the chicken coop, not the store. Smiling without looking back, Jung claimed it was almost New Year's Eve. So the local stores had massive lines, and he had to wait forever. Spinning around, he pointed right at her. "Where did you get my keys?" Hopping up, Lu shot back that Jung never cooked or ordered any food. That is why Uncle Lee specifically asked her to drop by and check on him. Then she saw it, bloodstains on his clothes, and she instantly panicked. She assumed he just got into some fight, but he remained quiet. Jung shut down. He coldly told her she needed to go home right now. Otherwise, her uncle might get the wrong idea about her staying out so late. Grabbing his jacket, Lu demanded he look at her, but Jung stubbornly resisted. He yelled that he just wanted a bun. Then her gaze fell on his torn sleeve. Terrible, fresh wounds. It was immediately clear how serious things were. Lu froze. The sheer severity of his injuries left her completely speechless. Realizing there was no point in trying to hide his state any longer, Jung finally turned. Her voice trembled as she asked where he got hurt. He dodged the question. He claimed he just forgot to buy the eggs. He tried to slip away, but she gripped his shirt, demanding real answers. So he lied. Jung claimed some random robber had jumped him on the street. But he was fast enough to chase the guy down and beat him up. And sadly, the police could not even identify the guy afterward. He waved his hands, boasting about his lightning-fast reflexes, but Lu saw right through him. She listened in silence, fully aware that her friend was lying. As he kept talking, he did not notice her hand reaching toward his face. Jung froze instantly, caught completely off guard by her sudden warmth and care. Lu stared at him quietly, her mind racing with worry about his injuries. Those deep cuts looked incredibly dangerous, and she stood frozen right beside him. She softly cradled his face, silently trying to give him some comfort. Feeling totally defeated, Jung panicked, realizing she did not believe a single word. Messy ingredients sat scattered across the table, completely forgotten by now. He had not even cleaned up yet, despite his original plan to make dinner. Staring right into his eyes, she lightly traced the cuts with her fingers. She wanted to feel just how deep the damage really was. Looking concerned, Lu asked if that hurt, since he seemed so eerily calm. With a weak smile, Jung admitted he only wanted to sleep right now. Exhaustion had completely numbed his entire body. Lu stood there in total silence. She kept her eyes locked on his face, waiting for some honest answers. But he only panted heavily. Turning to leave, she threatened to tell Uncle Lei. That threat left Jung completely petrified. He was totally stunned. Catching her hand, he begged her to stop, insisting he was just defending himself. But Lu remained totally unmoved, worn down by the brutal fight. Jung collapsed onto the hard floor, leaving her standing over him. She turned around in a panic, immediately asking if he was okay. Worried, Lu insisted he needed to go to the hospital, but he refused. He claimed he had medicine at home and could manage without doctors. Frowning, she asked if he really thought she would just give him pills. He smiled and asked for help. Soon, Lu wrapped Jang in bandages. Jang screamed in pain because her rough care was way worse than expected. Grumbling, the unhappy guy said he had not asked to be mummified today. He only wanted his girlfriend to help him bandage up a simple wound. Playfully slapping his shoulder, Lu asked if he would get into fights again. Jang quickly promised her that it would never happen again. Coming closer, she asked him to swear, and he firmly repeated the promise. But then he tried to argue, claiming men cannot live without fighting. Angry, Lu swung her arm to strike him, demanding he repeat his promise. Taking the light blows, Jang quickly tried to justify himself. He claimed he would only watch next time, though she clearly doubted him. Knowing she could not do anything more, Lu walked toward the door. But Jang cheerfully asked if she was really going to leave him alone. Stopping, she began to mimic him, playfully teasing her childhood sweetheart. She just wanted to soften the heavy atmosphere between them. Slamming the door loudly, she headed home, leaving him alone in the room. The room was filled with silence as he stretched out on the sofa, staring. Staring at the ceiling, he thought about everything that happened in the dark world. He decided to rest, but then he remembered the watchman. The man had asked him to deliver a message to Boo, making Jang sigh. Wait, is he really just going to ignore that old watchman's warning? There was simply no telling what kind of trouble it could lead to. Sitting up, Jang firmly decided to stay out of it, convincing himself it was too risky. The crazy mission was definitely not worth risking his life or his safety. No name was left behind, just a random request from the watchman. Fulfilling it was impossible anyway, so Jang clicked on the shadow icon instead. He hoped the screen would reveal the system's hidden data. A massive yellow orb symbol appeared, opening up a new system window. Detailed information about the opponent he fought in the dark world appeared. Jang carefully read through every single line of this detailed report. Outside his window, the night was dark as stars shone brightly in the sky. He wondered if the data of his first defeated enemy would show up. Leafing through the system tabs, Jang wondered if the shadow was absorbed. He wanted to see how clearly the system would display everything. Then he saw it, a skill called Insidious Strike. Intrigued, Jang decided to study its exact capabilities in detail. The description called it a stealth attack that was impossible to detect. If successfully landed, it would deal massive, soul-crushing damage. Getting up from the sofa, he decided to test this technique in practice. Dropping into a solid fighting stance, Jang began to swing his arms. He imagined making a powerful lunge, deeply enjoying the practice session. Straining his entire body and gritting his teeth, the hero tries to catch some sign of magic. But nothing happens around him, absolutely nothing, not even a single flicker. Furious, he stomps his foot and yells that this stupid system must have made a mistake. Slowly calming down, Jung starts to rethink things. You see, a hidden skill like this probably needs a real target to activate. Exhausted, he sinks onto the sofa, thinking it is better to resume training later on. He just needs the right time and the right place to test things. Clicking back to his menu, Jung selects a brand new sector to investigate. Uncovering more about his traits is his main goal. The screen lists his total points and a mysterious option to transform into a stalker. It looks downright creepy. Reading the description, Jung feels pretty irritated. This guide is way too complicated, offering zero simple explanations. Suddenly, a flashing alert reveals that his shadow has transformed. Now it obeys him completely, allowing him to merge directly with its essence. He gets incredibly excited. This gift seems truly one of a kind. Testing it is his top priority. The system even heals fatal wounds. It slows heavy bleeding while giving him insane physical buffs. After studying these stat bonuses more carefully, the hero smiles. He decides that living a short, thrilling life beats sitting around at home forever. Leaping out of bed, he decides to test his strength, calling his shadow forward. Right on cue, a tiny dark spot appears right there on the floor. It gradually expands, bubbling up and taking the form of a living creature. Within seconds, his own shadow stands tall, waiting for his first command. A perfect obedient double. Staring closely, Jung raises his hand. He points one finger, wanting to test his dark double's reaction time. Ensuring its accuracy is vital. Instantly, the shadow mirrors his pose. It stands perfectly still, copying him so well it feels like a mirror. The copy is flawless. As their fingertips touch, the ability activates. Jung feels the dark transformation start. The physical and shadow worlds collide. Both worlds begin merging inside his body, bleeding into one another like liquid night. One side of his body turns pitch black, woven entirely from darkness. The other half remains human. The contrast is terrifyingly beautiful. Mesmerizing, one eye stays normal, while the other burns bright blue. It gives him a chilling, otherworldly gaze, then he completely vanishes. He dissolves entirely into the gloom, leaving no human trace behind. Only a dark silhouette remains, molded from the night itself. Inspecting his new look, Jung cannot believe this is his own body. He is absolutely fascinated by how unique this form feels. Taking a deep breath, he exhales a powerful stream of cold air. Watching the force shake nearby objects, he prepares for a speed test. He bolts directly toward the opposite wall, stunned by how effortlessly he glides across. Suddenly, he is zipping around the room, changing directions instantly. He leaves blurry trails behind, practically dissolving into the air. Winds whip up as he accidentally bumps right into his furniture. This speed is unbelievable, proving he has reached a whole new tier. Eager to test his physical limits, Jung reached out to his bed to see how much his raw strength had actually increased, and right then, with just one hand, young guy lifted the heavy bed effortlessly, realizing just how insanely strong he had become. Next, he grabbed a massive hammer weighing around 100 kilograms to test his durability. He wanted to see how tough his body really was. He swung the weapon and, head in shadow form, silence, the defense actually worked beautifully. He felt zero pain. Overjoyed by this power, Jung burst into a loud, confident laugh, declaring that he was now unbeatable, but that joy instantly cut short. His neighbor downstairs started banging on the ceiling, shouting for him to keep it quiet. Jung sighed seriously. He got way too carried away this time. Shifting back to his human self, he admired how incredibly easy it was to hide. It was surprisingly reliable. Then, out of nowhere, the game system popped up again. The system offered to unlock a new stalker class, completely catching him off guard. He was instantly curious. The new notification showed he already had some skills. His transformation was incomplete. He was not a true stalker yet. A warning flashed, saying the high risks could actually turn into major opportunities. Accept or refuse. Staring at the screen, Jung hesitated deeply. Jung wondered if he should take the gamble and test this power immediately. Or maybe he should wait. As he hesitated, his eyes caught a detail. The system had highlighted risks in bright red, but his intense curiosity won. Before he could decide, a massive shadow loomed, a total nightmare. He screamed that he had not chosen yet, but resistance was useless. Dark energy wrapped around him like a massive cocoon, dragging his entire body inside. He lost all control of his body. Suddenly, everything in the room went wild. Furniture shifted and shook violently, and a bottle of medicine fell off the table. It shattered instantly, spilling the medicine across the floor. Outside, The windows glowed brightly, but outside, not a single soul noticed. Inside, thick droplets of liquid slowly pooled across the messy floor. Stains left behind, a quiet witness, now in full stalker form. Jung stepped onto the floor in his slippers, feeling an odd surge of power. The system chimed in, declaring that he was now a natural-born killer. His attacks would always inflict critical damage, but running from risks meant certain death. Back in reality, shocked, Jung stared at his hands in disbelief. A god-slaying power, he could barely believe his own eyes. Excited by these insane possibilities, he decided to study his new skills. His skills in detail to find the true limits of his new abilities. In shadow form, his physical power spiked massively. While his bloodlust became much easier to control, a strange icon of a pig flashed on the screen, detailing a brand new skill called decapitation. If a target's health fell low enough, this skill would execute them instantly. During combat, Jung could activate this ability based on the enemy's condition, as well as their comparative strength, experience, and overall level of power. Totally absorbed in this data, he sat quietly before the glowing screen. Ignore the bloody bandages, he only cared about the data. On this lethal skill, Jung guessed it was his ultimate trump card. It only activates by taking a life. Outside, deep darkness reigns. Laundry hangs on the balcony. Above him, a dim light burns, casting a soft yellow glow over the room, having finished studying. The strange stats, Jang smiles, feeling his body gradually undergo changes. Fully aware of his new self, he raises his hand high. Jang screams that he is immortal, bursting into a manic, ecstatic laugh. Suddenly, a powerful surge of raw energy rushes straight through his body, blindsiding him with this sudden, monstrous strength, needing to verify his condition. He quickly tears away the old bandages, exposing his bare skin. He wants to see what happened to his wounds, to his absolute shock. Every single injury has vanished completely, leaving his skin totally unblemished. It is a literal miracle. Tracing his fingers down his arm, Jang realizes that even the deepest gashes have sealed up. No medicine could do this. Only a tiny, scabbed-over scrape is left right on his stomach. Without a second thought, he peels the thin scab right off, holding the dried skin in his palm. Jang realizes this insane recovery comes directly from his new shadow form. This godlike regeneration is absolutely unreal. Meanwhile, classmates show Lu a viral article on their phone screens, claiming that Jang was brutally beaten 88 times, demanding to know if it is actually true. They insist he fought some street vendor, anxiously asking if Jang is injured. Asking if he is badly hurt and offering to visit. After a pause, Lu replies that they should not believe stupid rumors. In reality, a stray dog just chased him, but despite Lu's excuse, the boys still want to visit him. Dragging Lu along across the wide river that splits the city, approaching his apartment door. They feel incredibly anxious, fearing the absolute worst. Grabbing the handle firmly, Lu tells them to see for themselves. That if they do not believe her, Jang is completely fine. Retrieving the spare key, she slides it into the lock and confidently turns the deadbolt, opening up the dark apartment. Right then, a classmate asks how Lu even got a key to Jang's place. The sudden question makes her instantly freeze up. Forcing a quick smile, she turns back and replies that Uncle Lee handed her the key a while ago, trying desperately to hide her embarrassment. Stepping inside, Lu calls out loudly, asking if Jang is home, and announcing that their school friends are here to check on him. Meanwhile, Jang is currently collapsed on his bedroom floor, panting heavily and writhing in absolute agony. The severe pain returns. He realizes his stupid mistake. Tearing that scab off has completely reopened the wound on his stomach. It hurts like hell now. Rushing to his side, Lu panics, asking about his bandages. Jang grunts out a quick explanation while the classmates watch. Standing near the door, they cannot hear a single word of the hushed exchange. Boys immediately assume that the rumors are true and his injuries are severe. Sprinting over, they start squeezing his arms and feeling his solid muscles. Completely blown away by his build, firing off endless questions about the fight. Annoyed by their pushy behavior, Lu shoves them away, trying desperately to clear them out of his room. Once the door closes, the classmates. He heard painful cries behind him, but didn't dare turn back. The terrified boy asked if Jang would be all right. She quietly reassured him everything would be fine. With the medicine ready, Lu carefully treated the open wound on his stomach. He had picked at it, and now Jang yelled for sympathy. He kept crying out, but the girl sitting beside him on the bed sternly told him to hush. "Calm down," she said. That's when Jang noticed her short skirt. Staring at her incredibly long, slender legs, he suddenly tensed up. He couldn't help but look. Mesmerized by his childhood sweetheart, he watched her lean in. Using a cotton pad, she gently and carefully continued applying the ointment to the open wound. Jang endured the stinging pain, trying to look away from her legs. She glared at him, warning that he fought way too often. He immediately tried to justify his actions. "It wasn't my fault," he insisted, putting all the blame on that greedy merchant. Lu stared sternly. She genuinely wanted to help, but he acted so ungrateful. Reaching out with a dramatic sigh, she suddenly pinched both of his chubby cheeks. "You only act like this because Uncle Lei isn't around to discipline you." Clutching the medicine bottle tightly, Lu demanded to know exactly what he did yesterday. "Tell the truth, no lies or silly exaggerations allowed." In a serious voice, Jang claimed he had performed a heroic act of pure justice. Lu eyed him skeptically. She didn't believe him. Jang laughed quietly, knowing she would never believe the wild truth anyway. As she bandaged him, he asked about her father. When did he return last night? Surprised, she admitted he never showed up. Jang frowned, warning her that the night watch was far too brutal and dangerous. They forced officers to work heavy morning shifts, followed by grueling duties late into the evening. It was exhausting. Upset by the reality, Lu fell silent. She knew he was telling the absolute truth, even if it felt deeply unfair. Staring at her, Jang felt incredibly sorry for his friend. She barely saw her father these days, constantly missing him because of his grueling work. The sheer danger of the night watch weighed heavily on his mind. Claimed lives, his uncle lost an arm, Lin Mo died, and others were deeply scarred. Even Lu's father was wounded, ending his hopes of advancement. With quiet curiosity, Lu asked if Jang would still join the dangerous night watch. Getting up, the young man quietly weighed the massive risks. Was putting his life on the line really worth it for a future in uniform? Lost in deep thought, Jang remained completely silent for a while. The decision was too difficult. Finally, he gave her his honest answer. "I don't know," he honestly admitted, a response that caught her completely off guard. She had expected a confident answer. Trying to lighten the heavy mood, he forced a laugh. "Are there at least any pretty girls on night watch duty?" Not amused by his joking, Lu pinched his cheek and told him to shut up. He was acting so incredibly inappropriate. Meanwhile, classmates were eagerly eavesdropping, pressing ears flat against the door. They wanted to know the truth, one boy whispered to his classmate. He asked what was happening, and she irritably snapped that it was none of his business. Obvious, after a few moments, they finally stepped inside, standing awkwardly right in front of Lu. And Jang, smiling warmly, the young hunter looks up at his classmates, asking why they had suddenly decided to drop by his house. The guys eagerly explain that they heard all about the crazy incident from yesterday, which is exactly why they had to come check on him. Spotting some bizarre bruises on Jang's hands, the group immediately assumes they are love marks left by Lu, silently sharing some knowing smirks with each other. Relaxing back on the bed, Jang assures everyone he is perfectly fine, telling them not to worry before inviting them to grab a seat. Gesturing wildly, the boy starts to describe his simple trip to buy some soy sauce and the bizarre run-in with that creepy man. With a bag, they listen while Lu fumes, highly annoyed by his lies. Lifting up his shredded jacket, Lu declares she's tossing it out, since there is absolutely no way anyone could ever wear it. Paying no attention to her, Jang casually agrees to throw it out while keeping up his incredibly dramatic story. Second later, he suddenly remembers what was inside that jacket, and his face instantly freezes. Because tucked in the pocket is something he actually bought for her. Sensing the impending doom, he lunges forward, shouting that his belongings are still inside. And desperately tries to grab it. As Lu spins around, a pack of sanitary pads slips from the coat, landing right on the ground. Everyone instantly freezes in absolute shock and confusion. A heavily awkward, uncomfortable silence descends upon the room while the bright package sits on the floor, and absolutely nobody dares to say a word. Blushing hard, Lu demands to know why Jang bought feminine pads, her voice filled with sheer embarrassment and utter confusion. Jang simply explains that he noticed her stomach was hurting yesterday and only wanted to help out. He just completely forgot about them afterwards. Their jaw-dropped classmates watch the whole thing play out, while one guy slowly realizes these intimate secrets are meant for couples, and the other girl records everything. On her phone, picking the package up off the floor, Jang hands it over to Lu and gently tells her that she can always count on him when she needs backup. Without any embarrassment, he grips the pads firmly, treating them like some precious, legendary treasure. Totally oblivious to how hilariously awkward he looks, utterly mortified, Lu slams her hands onto her hips and begins screaming that he absolutely did not need to buy her these things, baffled by her sudden fury and feeling deeply hurt since his intentions were completely pure. Jang tosses the package back onto the floor, highly annoyed. Once their friends finally leave, he still cannot fathom why on earth his girlfriend got so incredibly worked up over a genuinely kind gesture. The pads are left forgotten on the floor, now that Lu and their classmates have headed home. A heavy silence fills the empty apartment. Once again alone, Jang breathes a sigh of relief, glad that nobody is around to distract his deep thoughts. Ready to jump back into the action, he extends his hand towards the system screen, tapping on his mysterious shadow icon. Right then, a brilliant blue began to glow like a strange hologram, opening a door to a whole new world. Standing right in the center of the pattern, Jang triggered his shadow form. The dark power slowly crept up, seeping deep into his physical body and mind. Thick darkness wrapped around him, splitting his face into two completely different halves. One side stayed human, while the other transformed into pure, living shadow. Dropping into a low fighting stance, he prepared to test his new strength. To test his limits, deep darkness seeped into his very cells. It enveloped him completely as he slowly sank into an endless abyss. Moments later, he was in a dark world. His body had fully transformed, feeling a strange unity with the shadows. Surprisingly, there was absolutely no sign of dust, pollution, or terrible odors. Instead, Jung felt completely at peace inside his own skin. A sudden realization hit him. He had been living in filth for so long. But now he stood in a vast and perfectly clean sanctuary. A system bar suddenly appeared right above him, filled to 60%. Spreading his arms, his agonizing stomach pain vanished. He was ready to start the training he actually came here for. Dropping into a plank position, Jung began doing some serious push-ups. He focused entirely on his breathing, keeping every single muscle tight. With every passing second, he felt raw strength surge into his tired muscles. Suddenly, Jung shot upward. Electrified by a sudden surge of power, he crashed heavily back to the ground. The impact stung, but he only felt pure excitement. Getting back up, Jung laughed aloud, completely drunk on this new energy. He felt an absolute rush, so he dropped right back down for more. Jung pumped out rep after rep, completely immune to any exhaustion. He realized this shadow form was drastically boosting his physical endurance. It made him feel incredibly free. His shadow bite skill activated, drawing pure darkness from the surrounding layer. This process kept Jung fully conscious while his body absorbed the darkness. His physical stats skyrocketed, his muscles packing on sheer size and power. System alerts flashed before his eyes, showing his stats rising fast. Every number proved that Jung was becoming an absolute beast. He unlocked about 1,000 different ways to optimize his own body. His physical coordination, ultimate strength, and pure stamina were now totally maxed out. But this cramped room was starting to limit his intense training routine. Jung decided to teleport right out into the open sports field. Feeling the fresh night air, he marveled at this incredible new territory. With this kind of dark power, would other creatures bow to him? He smiled, stepping up to the park horizontal bar to continue. Grabbing the cold steel, Jung prepared for a whole new level. He launched into dynamic tricks, moving with lightning-fast agility. Jung spun and flipped through the air, looking like a total pro. He was determined to master this power. Meanwhile, back in reality, at the Night Watch headquarters, urgent security matters were unfolding. A specialized squad made their way straight to the main conference room. They needed to share intelligence and make some critical tactical decisions. Stepping inside, they found the chief and senior staff working intently. Everyone was gathered around the table, deeply analyzing the latest threats. Reading from a critical report, the director delivered some unsettling news. Unrest in the shadow layer was rapidly rising and spreading outward. The teams discovered major breaches across several districts. Their representatives quickly met to discuss how to seal them and protect the innocent residents. Clutching a folder, the secretary warned everyone that the road ahead would be brutal, since the pollution mostly choked residential areas, this was happening for a reason unlike the past, listening closely. To her report, Lu tensed up, realizing the true scale of the disaster. Left entirely alone with his squad, Lu weighed their next move. Against their enemies, rubbing his hands, he worried. Monsters were appearing too often lately, and this was an incredibly troubling sign. Studying the case of the rookie who died in the dark world, Lu noted. There had already been 4 dangerous incidents in just the last few days. The file contained gruesome photos of the victim, capturing the exact spot where he died. Caught off guard, the poor guy was wiped out after colliding with an entity lacking any skills to defend himself. On one hand, the total incident count did not look critical yet, but Lu understood that nobody could predict when the others would strike next. While one teammate scanned the paperwork, the leader thought about the shadow layer. These breaches were far more dangerous than normal anomalies. Looking incredibly grave, Lu figured that if they compared the others to wild, ferocious beasts, their true strength completely surpassed the team's expectations. It felt as if a colossal monster had begun its attack, closing in on the Night Watch building, making the room incredibly tense. Observing the heavy atmosphere from the sidelines, Lee tried to cheer them up, reminding everyone that they could survive any crisis. Sitting on a bench away from the table, he told them not to act as if they had already lost. Showing real confidence, Lu asked if they were truly not prepared for another battle with the enemy. Discouraged by his sudden intensity, the boys stared silently in confusion, trying to make sense of it. Their hesitation annoyed Lu. He scowled, trying to swallow the rising anger and disappointment at their visible weakness. After a tense moment, the faces of the Night Watch soldiers finally began to smile. Seeing that Lu backed them, Lee chose not to step in and instead gestured for the presenter to calmly keep going with his report. The briefing then shifted to reviewing all the soldiers pulled from active duty due to injuries, disciplinary issues, or a lack of proper experience. Once the meeting wrapped, Lu stepped out into the hallway and stared through the panoramic windows, taking in the massive grid of towering skyscrapers. Below, pulling a fresh pack of cigarettes out of his pocket, Lu figured a quick smoke might help him escape his problems for just a moment. Desperate to distract himself from the crushing weight, the leader pulled a single cigarette from the open pack, but as he searched for a lighter, Lu thought about how they had landed in deep trouble right before New Year's Eve. Now, a brutal task lay ahead. Suddenly, his eyes flew wide open at a completely impossible, bizarre turn of events. Slowly sliding the unlit cigarette out of his mouth, Lu stared. He turns the object over, twisting it between his fingers to analyze its shape. But he soon realizes these are cigarette-shaped cookies, wondering who swapped them. Deep in thought, Lu fails to notice a real pack flying straight toward him. The pack flies straight at his head, appearing as if out of thin air. With swift reflexes, he manages to snatch it out of the air just in time. This keeps it from crashing to the floor, utterly baffling him. Spinning around irritably, Lu tenses up, expecting a hostile stranger. Instead, Lee sits on the bench and asks his tense friend what is wrong. Lee cannot understand Lu's sudden anger and over-the-top reaction. Taking a drag, Lee asks if Lu wants one, hoping to ease the tension. Offering the pack, he extends a silent gesture of friendship. A quiet moment of support follows as Lu hesitates to decide. Lu smiles and eats the cigarette-shaped cookie he is still holding. A playful move that instantly lightens the mood. Still, Lu acts annoyed. He grumpily tells Lee to keep those away, claiming he fears lung cancer. Caring deeply about his health, he scoffs, making Lee chuckle. With an amused smile, Lee asks if that is his only fear. Slightly irritated, Lu tells him to drop the nonsense and get to the real point. He demands to know the real reason Lee chose to share this. Lee lights another cigarette, staying quiet as he carefully chooses his words. He wants to explain the situation without upsetting his close partner at all. Lee reveals that new intelligence just came down from the higher-ups. It involves several critical incidents. Lu tenses up, demanding details. Staring intently, Lu demands to know what kind of intel they received. Lee just sits there in silence, studying his friend's reaction. Lee watches, assessing how quickly his partner can process the news. Shocked, Lu presses for answers, asking what other crucial details he missed. Feeling completely drained and incredibly tense, Lu finally takes a seat. Clutching his head, he demands immediate confirmation of the facts. Lee calmly lights up again, telling his partner to just check his laptop. As Lu boots it up, Lee casually asks about his daughter's studies. At that moment, an urgent system notification pops up on Lu's screen. It states that all second-rank warriors must register their kids. Their children are being drafted to join the dangerous night watch. Hiding his shock, Lu snaps the laptop shut, instantly changing the subject. He asks how Lee is doing, then brings up his doubts about Jang. He believes the boy is dishonest and his skills are nothing special. Hearing this, Lee nervously lights a cigarette, desperately trying to mask his intense agitation. He keeps his feelings in check, taking a moment to process the insult. Lee quietly defends him, arguing that Jang has no reason to lie. Curious, Lu asks if Lee truly intends to send the boy into the humanities. But Lee replies he would rather the boy learn a practical trade instead. Still, getting into the special faculty is non-negotiable. Lu remains convinced. Lu thinks his partner is joking, certain that his nephew will fail. To end the tense talk and avoid digging deeper, Lee quietly shuts down. He crushed his burning cigarette on the edge of the table, clearly done talking with Lu. He coldly muttered that they were still considering their decision. Lu watched him leave with an incredibly tense, uneasy look, sensing that trouble was brewing. He snapped, shouted at his friend, almost knocked the passing secretary over. Quickly smoothing her clothes and keeping a polite, professional smile, the girl offered a hasty apology. Lee turned around. What was going on? He looked highly interested. Setting her folder down carefully, she explained that a critical new message had arrived. It came directly from the deepest corners of the shadow layer. Exhausted but deeply intrigued, Lee opened the files. The reports detailed a highly unusual shadow entity that was currently causing trouble. Get this, they called him the crazy athlete because he saluted at every appearance. Showcasing endless energy, he trained his body daily like a total sports fanatic. Whenever shadow detectors approached, the creature instantly stopped. Instead of fighting, it would simply raise a hand and give them a mock salute. The secretary opened the logs, explaining there was absolutely no record of this entity. Since the database was empty, she decided to notify Lee right away. Reading through the reports, Lee felt a wave of anger at this unknown enemy. He had absolutely no idea who was pulling the strings behind this bizarre new threat. Meanwhile, in a parallel world, a pale, eerie light washed over the dark, empty, starry streets. Suddenly, a massive red spider materialized right in front of a shadowy figure. The monster was packed with a truly colossal amount of pure protein. Filming the encounter, the streamer hyped up the rare meat. To his complete shock, his subscribers absolutely loved the wild footage. Jang noticed a massive wave of engagement, suddenly feeling like a celebrity. But his excitement faded when he spotted something highly unsettling online. A flood of other creators were suddenly streaming their own shadow encounters. Tons of people were actively recording and sharing the exact same chaos. Panic, overwhelmed by the scale of this mess, he dropped his phone. Desperate for answers, Jang decided to speak directly to the system. Suddenly, a brand new attribute officially registered on his screen. It detailed a lethal new shadow beast with a unique killing ability. Realizing who broadcasted the feed, Jang completely lost his temper. He furiously blamed his own shadow for exposing his greatest secret. Just then, a highly strange system notification caught his eye. This alert looked completely different from anything he had ever seen. The flashing screen delivered a brutal verdict. His life expectancy was now exactly 100 hours. Imagine the absolute terror as Jang realized he had barely 5 days left. He was forced to accept the brutal reality of his ticking clock. His mind spun, desperately trying to understand why his time was cut short. Then it clicked, the forbidden shadow biting skill was finally demanding its price. That desperate gamble was turning into a literal disaster for his life. Forcing his racing heart to calm down, he knew he needed a plan. He had to figure out some way, any way, to claw back more precious time. Scanning the skill description, a dark path to survival finally revealed itself. He would have to become a hunter, harvesting his enemies just to stay alive. In other words, the young man could only survive if he kept killing targets and earning points the system showed he still had a real shot at. Achieving eternal life, though he also risked losing absolutely everything in the process. After reading the text closely, Jang realized it, hunting other creatures could grant him immortality, so he decided to take full advantage of it. Reading the warning about how his body could mutate after his own death. Completely different shape, Jang wondered what the system was trying to warn him. About frustrated, the young warrior could not understand how anyone enjoyed taking lives, and realized that if he could not handle it, he would have to ask his uncle for help. Peeking around the building corner, he finally spotted the massive spider, deciding he had to take it down first to secure those critical points. He would not waste this. Jang quickly pulled out his phone to record, confident that the night watch would never detect him. Using a hidden stealth skill, his physical body instantly transformed into a deep shadow, melting directly into the thick darkness until he was completely invisible. But then a strange chime from his phone suddenly signaled the start of his live stream, leaving him deeply embarrassed as he realized he had just blown his cover. Greeting his viewers, Jang whispered that they were about to witness an incredibly rare sight, a direct encounter with an otherworldly beast that looked like a massive spider. Streaming the event, Jang slowly creeped forward, planning to smack the creature with his pole to test its reactions. Creeping closer step by step, he raised his arm and took a swing, getting ready to hit the target while staying laser-focused. Having spent thousands on a solid steel pole beforehand, he was confident that it would do the job. But here's the thing, the spider instantly senses the threat. It suddenly tenses up and begins shuffling its legs, pulling in its massive body. The beast goes still. Jang instantly freezes, waiting for the perfect shot to strike. Sneaking around to attack from the opposite side, the young hunter raises his weapon, swinging hard. Suddenly, his heart beats wildly. His heart begins to hammer. Jang breaks out in a sweat, and honestly feeling that things are spinning out of control. Keeping his eyes locked on his foe, he feels an intense, suffocating pressure, knowing that even the smallest slip-up means immediate death. He's just thankful to be in shadow form, since the deadly creature cannot detect his physical presence at all right now. Approaching from behind, our warrior decides to risk it and try to find the beast's weak spots, looking for the absolute best place to strike. Spotting a clear vulnerability on its hairy body, Jang decides to take action and ready his attack. Tasting an easy victory right around the corner, the young warrior raises his weapon, swinging hard to deliver a fatal, crushing blow. But let's rewind 30 minutes. The spider was perfectly content in this pitch-black world, enjoying the absolute peaceful silence of the shadows. Amused, she believed that no real danger could ever reach her here, since staying alert was always enough to survive the deep dark. Recently, she had clashed with a human and taken a minor wound, but she still got to savor her delicious, fresh prey. Lying motionless on the freezing dirt, she decided to rest a bit to recover her strength and rebuild her energy. Suddenly, the sensory spikes on her back flared up, making her whole body freeze as her thoughts locked onto a threat. An incoming danger. It was clear to her that someone was watching her every move, making the spider highly alert, failing to spot the young man. Creeping right up to her leg, the monster kept scanning for danger keenly. Sensing the nearby intruder, moving with slow, cautious steps, she chose to abandon her nest and find a safe hideout where she could quietly heal and recover. Suddenly, a bizarre energy surged through her body, forcing the beast to lock up instantly, strained and trying to pinpoint the bizarre anomaly. Then, a massive strike slammed directly into her back, causing her flesh to tremble as a high-pitched screech echoed. The assailant attacked once more with devastating power, sweep-kicking her off balance with a heavy lunge, sending her massive body slamming down into the dirt, kicking up dust as the steel rod drove deep inside. Right then, Jang felt a massive, dark shadow flood out like a surging river. Gripping his weapon tightly, the hunter saw that his monstrous foe had only 40% of its health remaining. He just needed to land a few perfect strikes. Suddenly, a massive leg lunged right at his face, giving him zero time to brace himself or deflect the incoming blow. With a heavy impact, the spider slammed Jang backward, sending him crashing hard into the dirt. Scrambling back to his feet, the warrior smirked, realizing that even this intense, vicious strike did not actually hurt much. He was still completely ready to continue the fight. Meanwhile, the giant spider let out a screech of absolute agony over her ruined flower as her challenger stood back up and braced for the next clash. Seeing the dark fluid leaking from her wounds, the fighter smiled. He had landed a critical hit, and honestly, things were finally looking up in his direction. Pressing his advantage, Jang advanced with absolute confidence, ignoring any debris in his path as the lingering aches completely faded away. Switching up his strategy, he halted and activated a shadow skill, it was the ultimate finisher to end this duel, slipping into the pitch-black gloom. He sank straight into the dark abyss beneath, his boots merging with the empty void as a formless shadow. Like an ambush predator, he submersed himself into the fluid darkness, where he unlocked his unique stealth movement skill from deep within the shadows. Jang prepared a deadly surprise attack, aiming to get behind his opponent. For a flank strike, knowing a direct assault would be foolish, the warrior crept up on the blind spot of the giant beast, waiting for his opening. Creeping right up, he prepared to strike, ready to land the decisive blow to finish the monster. Raising his weapon high, he struck hard at his terrifying foe, knowing the entire fight hinged on his sheer willpower. With fury burning in his eyes, he realized that his dark stalker form meant playtime was over. It was time to win it all. Costs. Meanwhile, a young girl was scrolling through social media on her phone, completely tuned out from the world. Along with her boyfriend, this popular influencer Lala had plans to dine at a fancy restaurant tonight where a brand new virtual zone had recently opened. Stretching her legs, she got comfortable. Soon, she was completely lost in this world, ignoring everything else around her. Beside her lay a pile of belongings in a small photo album. Resting on her stomach, she swung her legs back and forth, thinking how incredibly boring most live streams had become lately. But then an unusual stream caught her eye. It felt totally different. Instantly hooked, she watched as a strange shadow appeared on the screen, calling himself You from BU. The mysterious streamer left her completely baffled. Where was this place? Giant silhouettes of a wolf and dragon loomed over a pitch-black city, sending a thrill of pure excitement through viewers. Watching this play out live, she couldn't believe her absolute luck. She was in awe. Meanwhile, the shadow shared details about a disgusting lowly spider, which let out a deeply unsettling screeching noise. Seeing the stupid chat messages from other viewers, she got genuinely annoyed at the meaningless spam. Holding her breath, she slowly brought the screen closer and planted a soft kiss on his image, pretending her idol was right there beside her, eager to finally leave a comment. She sent a text offering to help this enigmatic and elusive figure. On screen, the battle was intensifying, growing wilder by the second. Suddenly, the dark silhouette began to dissolve into a black abyss. Unable to believe her eyes, she wondered if this stream was actually coming straight from the underworld. Sitting up in bed with a grin, she felt an overwhelming, burning curiosity about what would happen next. On screen, the spider sensed a dense, sinister energy radiating from its opponent, slowly filling the room. Stepping forward, the young man launched a powerful kick, channeling all his built-up rage into the strike. Hit hard, the monster squealed, releasing a horrific, long, painful shriek that echoed through the entire chamber, refusing to yield to him. Jang activated his skills, causing their clashing powers to violently collide. A massive energy beam slammed into the earth, splitting the very ground beneath their feet with a deep crack. Thick dust quickly swirled around the giant beast as it froze in absolute confusion, completely lost. Staring at the broken floor amidst a blazing inferno, the creature hissed in anger, completely clueless as to why its strength was draining. Slipping behind it completely unnoticed, Jang casually tapped the beast on the back, effortlessly proving who was in charge. Totally confused and finding nobody, the frantic insect spun around viciously, desperate to find the attacker. Stepping back and making a silly face, the young man mockingly shouted to the monster that he was right there next to it. Lashing out with its huge claws, the giant beast repeatedly missed its target, while Jang simply stood there, smiling, watching the stream. The captivated girl couldn't hide her absolute awe for his brilliant, effortless fighting. Snug under her blanket, she watched in amazement as the bold host easily dominated the beast. Suddenly, a massive splash of purple goo pelted the spider, pinning it down and instantly stripping away all movement. The attack spreads, it covers the asphalt, filling up the space. It cuts off the spider, blocking her only path of escape. Trapped in a thick, viscous whirlpool of strange goo, she has absolutely no idea how to escape. She just laughs mockingly, refusing to run. She demands they keep fighting, convinced the acid cannot hurt her. A voice echoes from the void, asking if she truly thinks this sticky slime is useless. Can she really survive this, or is she done for? While the desperate beast frantically looks around, Jang quietly watches her movements from high above. He stands on a tall high-rise, keeping a close eye on his prey. Watch closely, he confidently whispers that his shadow now rules this space. With a sudden burst of speed, he leaps from the rooftop. He dives straight down toward the massive spider, aiming to end this fierce battle right now. A thick wave of sticky goo shoots forward, hitting the beast right in the open mouth. It completely paralyzes her, making her lose control of her body. While the monster struggles in vain, our hero keeps up his relentless pressure. He strikes fast, he takes full advantage of his sticky trap. He blinks from shadow to shadow, instantly teleporting through the ruins. He moves gracefully in the air, dodging every desperate counterattack. He proudly declares himself a hunter from the shadows, born to utterly crush his enemies. He tightly grips his heavy steel rod, completely ready to smash the giant insect to pieces. Touching down near the spider, he notes how endless combat has erased his memories. Even so, he still clearly remembers his own name. Channeling all his focused power, he drives the weapon straight down. He drives the rod deep, leaving her helpless. She cannot resist, the spider shrieks helpless under his feet. Dominating the battle, Jang embraces his role as the shadow. He feels truly proud of his growth, watching his giant enemy slowly lose all her strength. The square is lifeless, dark buildings tower over a fierce duel. Standing directly in front of the beast, he prepares his next move. Now watch, it is time to unleash his shadow bite skill and secure a total victory. The dome of pitch-black darkness suddenly wraps around Shio. The shadows slowly consume her, completely stripping away her power. He looks at his dark aura, mesmerized by its terrifying strength. This is his true source. He knows darkness brings him power. The shadows expand, swallowing up every single corner of the square. The world around them fades into a pitch-black nightmare. A strange, deep energy wraps around him as he surrenders to its flow. He feels an ancient, massive power awakening deep inside, taking full control of his body. The hunt is over. Stepping on her frozen body, he triumphs. The live broadcast captures his victory. Excited viewers instantly flood the chat with praise for the hunter. Clutching her phone close, a young girl watches him in pure awe. She hangs on to his every move, completely mesmerized. Her eyes go wide. She has never seen anyone this strong. She is captivated. This is a moment she will never forget. While scrolling through his channel page and reading his posts, the girl decided she needed to grab the mysterious blogger's attention, no matter what it took, she decided to subscribe and keep watching, convinced that she could somehow make contact with him and finally become a part of his world. Deciding to take a chance, she sent a private message, hoping for a response and asking if he would bring the star along on his next mission. Just then, his system popped up with details about an ancient shadow spider demon and its unique abilities that required closer study. Thanks to his recent hard-won victory, the young man gained the power to weave durable webs, secrete deadly acid, and infect even the strongest foes with it. Jing realized with disappointment that his opponent was merely a first-level mid-rank fighter, even though he initially thought he just took down a major threat. Stretching out his back, the young man realized that despite the massive gap in power, he won because of a surprise. Shadow Strike, looking at the huge crowd tuning into his live broadcast, he felt a massive rush of adrenaline and pure excitement. Smiling, he decided to keep everyone guessing, so the host abruptly cut the stream to hype up the audience. Staring at his hands, the young warrior saw that he could produce various kinds of webs, fueled entirely by his own shadow. Eager to test this, he extended his arm and a long, durable cord of sticky webbing shot straight toward a nearby building. Grabbing hold, Jing launched himself into the air, feeling unbelievably light, as if he were sailing through the sky like a bird. Thrilled by these incredible abilities, he could barely believe he could pull off such acrobatics. Feeling completely weightless, letting out a loud laugh, Jing pretended to be Spider-Man, easily scaling high-rise walls using his tough black threads. But suddenly his head slammed hard against an obstacle, in absolute surprise. The violent impact knocked him completely off balance, sending him crashing down as Jing plummeted toward the asphalt, unable to grab his webbing. He barely caught a lamppost, keeping his balance while nursing the sharp pain. Realizing he needed far more practice, just then he noticed his remaining lifespan had only crawled up to 7 days, bringing back a heavy sense of frustration and dread. Sitting alone on the edge of a skyscraper, the young man realized that rogue targets were not easy to locate, requiring a backup plan. Ready to go soon, a system notification warned that he should stay In the shadows more, which would slowly boost his reputation and overall strength. Out of nowhere, an option to unlock authority appeared, prompting him to inspect. This new skill with genuine interest, he could now place a tracking mark on the weak. Spots of his targets making his follow-up strikes incredibly precise. However, each mark drained his energy and risked exposing his own position, leaving him temporarily vulnerable. When utilizing these marks in combat, one of his core stats would hit a set level while his remaining attributes steadily climbed. During active hunts, all skills were enhanced, meaning his attacks no longer cost any of his valuable stored energy. Seeing that his special authority was finally unlocked, the young man wondered when he had actually started gaining fame, completely unaware of his growing popularity. He was stunned to find that 150 viewers were watching the playback. Zio could hardly believe his powers were revealed just because of the stream. Smiling, he decided to use his monster hunts and broadcasts to gain popularity and attract tons of new subscribers. Climbing down from the roof, he decided to work even harder today and put his abilities to the test, tracking down his target. Bright red spots suddenly appeared on her, revealing the absolute weakest spots. A terrifying beast stood before him, its vulnerabilities glowing like warning beacons. With incredible speed, Zio sprang onto a nearby lamppost, causing it to sway wildly before gently dropping back down onto the pavement. Darting forward, the young fighter prepared to unleash his decapitation skill. To end things in a single blow, his eyes flashing with a thirst for payback, he was confident victory was finally within his grasp. Morning came, bright sunlight flooded the windows of the high-rise apartment, reflecting off the glass and heating up the peaceful room. With a cotton swab, Lou carefully cleaned the cuts on Zio's face, trying not to hurt him. Holding his cheek, he suddenly cried out, grimacing in annoyance, completely confused by why her gentle care hurt so bad. With anger in her voice, she demanded to know who her friend had been fighting with this time, unable to comprehend his reckless actions. Avoiding her gaze, Zio slumped onto the sofa, and Lou quickly sat right beside him. She gently stroked his shoulder to calm him down, but he just sighed. He complained that she didn't get it, insisting he would become a hero. Regardless of her doubts, giving him a stern look, she made a sarcastic remark, asking if other great heroes whined this much from a little cotton. Waving the medicated cotton wool right in front of him, Lou warned him to stop throwing punches when he clearly lacked the skills to defend himself. His shadow form could heal him. Lou stared back, completely lost. She asked what on earth he meant, failing to understand his bizarre claims. Eager to dodge her questions, Zio quickly grabbed a fresh bottle of water. He suggested putting on a movie to distract her from the topic. Scrolling through her phone feed, Lou complained that there was absolutely nothing good to watch lately because everything had gotten incredibly monotonous. Everything was just so boring, but then she suddenly froze. She held her phone in her hands, mentioning a new blogger who had sparked massive curiosity everywhere. Intrigued, Zio looked closely at her and asked who exactly she meant, trying to understand why she cared. Turning her screen toward him, Lou pulled up the live stream of the mysterious streamer, wanting him to see this viral sensation firsthand. A dark silhouette suddenly filled the frame, representing the mysterious online host. He boldly called himself a murderer, instantly catching everyone's attention. The chat exploded with shock, recognizing his own online avatar, Zio choked on his water but decided to keep his mouth shut. He watched silently, deciding to keep quiet, not understanding her friend's dramatic reaction. Lou asked him what was wrong, wondering why he was so incredibly stunned and why this particular video had shook him so much. Smiling with water dripping from his face, Jang replies that he is doing fine. He then asks Lou how long she has been following this mysterious new uploader. Lou does not hide her excitement, admitting she discovered his channel just 2 days ago. To her, this creator is already a legend. Jang just smiles, staying quiet. He realizes his secret identity is blowing up way too fast, worrying the Night Watch might notice. Confused by his completely quiet reaction, Lou stares at him with a puzzled look. She honestly cannot figure out how he can stay so incredibly relaxed about it all. Suddenly, Lou claims that keeping secrets about others is just not worth the effort. After all, she thinks this creator is not really doing any major harm to anyone. Wearing a bright red skirt, she takes a seat right next to her quiet friend. Her eyes are glued to the screen, watching him tear through the beast horde. She grabs Jang by his arm, completely hooked on every single frame of the video. She keeps gushing over her brand new idol, enjoying every second of the epic stream. Suddenly, she declares that this guy is just too cool, completely catching Jang off guard. Without stopping, she pulls up some reaction videos discussing the mysterious fighter. Jang stays tense and quiet, fully aware that she is praising him without realizing it. Even with the stress, a small smirk of pride creeps onto his face. Absolutely thrilled, the girl simply cannot tear her eyes away from the bright screen. She dissects each and every move, totally mesmerized by this mysterious shadow fighter. Suddenly, she jumps up. Strutting around the room, she tries to grab his attention. It is clear she is getting pretty hooked on the idea of fame. Lu asks him outright if he thinks she has what it takes to go viral. Jang looks at her skeptically, asking what she could possibly even film. He jokes that she will probably just wear silk and dance in the dark. Getting annoyed, Lu snaps back that she could make some cool videos about other people. Jang dismisses the idea immediately, waving his hands to show it is a terrible plan. He asks if she seriously wants to get mixed up with the dangerous night watch. He is just trying to warn his friend about the massive risks involved here. Jang points out that going public in that outfit will only attract dangerous stalkers. He sarcastically warns her that absolutely nothing good will come from this reckless idea. He keeps emphasizing how these half-baked plans are just a shortcut straight to trouble. Lu probes him further, her mind already buzzing with a whole new plan. This only makes Jang grit his teeth in pure, mounting irritation. Wait for it, Lu actually draws her weapon to show she is serious. She points the loaded gun straight at the young man's back. Jang freezes, the cold steel sends a shiver down his spine. Angrily, she demands to know if he got hurt while spying on someone. Jang throws his hands up in defeat, quickly explaining that he was only joking. He desperately tries to defuse the situation, but she firmly taps him with the gun. Lu eyes him suspiciously, asking how she can even trust a word he says. Jang begs for a peace offering, but she simply shoves him toward the kitchen. Keeping her weapon raised, she demands that he go and cook her dinner. Sometime later, Jang collapses onto the sofa, completely drained of energy. He raises his hands in absolute relief that the chaotic storm has finally passed. Staring at his screen, he sighs, incredibly glad his scary friend has finally left. They left him alone, but seeing all those comments, Jang felt instantly irritated. Some viewers just did not understand. They had zero clue what was happening. Then his gaze shifted. He sighed heavily, realizing that some of them actually doubted him. They actually doubted his video, calling it fake and bruising his pride. They laughed it off as a total hoax, which completely ruined his mood. Determined to find answers, Jang clicked on a reaction video link. He wanted to see what they thought in the video. A content creator named Earthly Dao called him a fraud. Jang stared, completely shocked that someone would so openly mock his actual abilities. Clutching a folding fan, the blogger held up his phone and began ranting. Calling everything a massive lie, he started pointing out edits. Freezing on a frame of Jang fighting the shadow spider, Dao claimed. It was fully edited, desperately trying to convince all his viewers. Dao zoomed in, telling everyone to pay close attention to the background. He insisted it was fake, which made Jang's blood boil. Fuming, he didn't get why some random food blogger was making videos about him. He definitely didn't expect this weird backlash. Almost as if hearing him, Dao boasted that he was a retired night watchman who slew countless monsters in his youth. Honestly, who actually buys that? Intrigued, Jang scrolled down to check the viewer comments. The audience was completely split on who they should believe. Some believed the old-timer, while others stood by Jang's side. He just smiled, they would learn the truth eventually. But for now, he preferred to keep his true power hidden in the shadows. Shaking off the negativity, he accepted the doubt. He simply needed to hunt down stronger monsters to prove his skills. But before his next foray into the dark world, he wanted to teach Dao a lesson. He would use his abilities to show this old-timer real combat. Recalling those comments, Jang used his shadow skill to move undetected. He slipped away, instantly crossing over into the dark world. Gloomy buildings surrounded him as the heavy, freezing atmosphere set in. But he hadn't come empty-handed. He brought a small camera. He was going to record his actions to give them absolute proof. Jang securely attached the lens to his clothes, checking the angle. Sitting up on a roof, he looked down at the ground. The overall monster population seemed to have dropped since his last visit. But suddenly his eyes lit up as he spotted a target. A rank 6 monster was roaming nearby, time to hunt. The beast was a walking skeleton with grotesque tentacles for tongues. A high-ranking opponent actually worth his time. Jang grabbed his steel bat, laughing as he prepared to test the creature's true strength. Stepping resolutely to the very edge of the roof, he smiled. The hunt was officially on, and his veins surged with absolute determination. Raising one leg, he felt a brief flash of doubt, but instantly cast it aside. He knew hesitating here would be fatal, standing right on the edge of that tall building. Xiao carefully planned his next survival move. Thinking of his painful injuries and the solid advice he'd received, the young warrior sighed heavily. He sighed deeply, realizing safety was far more important than speed. Opting for the standard route, our warrior decided to play it safe. He chose to carefully take the stairs, making sure to avoid any dangerous missteps. Slipping into the shadows, our hero silently crept toward his target. The beast lurked right around the corner of the massive high-rise. Sensing a sudden presence, the creature growled viciously and spun around to hunt its prey. It scanned the empty air, trying to figure out where his invisible opponent was hiding. Jang quickly activated his skills, highlighting the monster's weak spots. Analyzing its body and movements, a red target suddenly locked on. The marker pointed directly at the head of the massive beast, looming before him. The data popped up. Jang instantly sensed the monster's hidden panic. It tried to look tough, but every movement showed absolute tension. Examining the creature closer, the guy noticed a striking resemblance to that bladed monster. The one from before, had it evolved, he shook the thought away. Dropping into a stance, he knew he'd trained hard for this exact moment. Grabbing his weapon, Jang prepared to strike, channeling all his power for this fight. He unleashed his signature 6-strike technique, focusing entirely on speed and precision. Pain exploded, losing blood and strength rapidly. The monster reeled in shock. It couldn't comprehend what was happening, completely overwhelmed by this blinding storm of attacks. Pushing off the ground, Xiao soared upward, feeling weightless in shadow form. Gliding effortlessly, he pulled level with his opponent in a single bound. He was ready for another round, instantly preparing to unleash his next swift attack. With absolute determination, the warrior activated his target systems. He locked onto the creature's weakest points. Readying another blow, the guy counted on his superior agility to land a hit. But the beast swiftly dodged, completely unharmed, and Jang's heavy strike slammed into the building wall, leaving massive cracks and shaking the structure. Concrete shattered instantly, sending dust and debris raining down with a crash. Dust swirled. Suddenly, Sha realized defeating this beast won't be a walk in the park. He needed absolute focus, but before he could even recover from the initial shock, another monster lunged forward, aiming to ambush him. Springing back, the guy leaped higher, weaving between the towering buildings. The beast's massive slash missed completely. Jang slipped right behind his foe. He analyzed its weak spots, waiting for the perfect, undefended opening to unleash a strike. Jang quickly slipped right behind his opponent, analyzing its weak spots. He waited for his moment. Suddenly, the beast prepared to slash with its sharp claws, charging forward along the ground, while Xiao deftly slipped away. He used his shadow speed to dodge. The monster roared in frustration, opening its grotesque jaws wide and growling to intimidate the young hero. A swarm of grotesque tongues whipped the air, desperate to land a hit. But they all missed. Next, it unleashed a mass of writhing tentacles. Jang kept his distance, batting them away cleanly with his bat. Unleashing its tongues again, the monster's head gets caught right between them. Jang quickly sizes up his options, but a sudden sharp pain hits him. He realizes the monster is launching a direct mental attack on his brain. It is testing his mental defenses, and letting his guard down proves costly. Falling straight into the trap, he takes a heavy claw strike to the chest. The searing pain drains his stamina, making him doubt his chances of winning. But giving up is not an option as he prepares for another strike. The massive blood loss drops him to his knees, but his resolve remains unbreakable. He scans for any weakness, searching for a way to turn things around. 34% of his blood gone in one hit. Talk about an absolute nightmare. He quickly calculates his remaining life force as the pressure builds. Sensing its clear advantage, the monster charges forward for another kill. Jang braces himself for the impact, dropping back into a solid defensive stance. He stares down his enemy with pure defiance. Brushing off the blood, the young warrior decides to stick to his plan. But he needs to execute this perfectly for it to actually work. The beast swings and misses completely as Jang vanishes straight into the dirt. Only his head is poking out of the ground, laughing. Honestly, the disrespect is real. Furious, the beast unleashes its energy, scattering deadly sparks all over the place. It waits calmly, fully expecting this massive area attack to shred Jang apart. But as the dust settles, his simple trick becomes painfully obvious. Seeing his attacks fail, the beast swings its heavy claws straight downward. It aims a devastating strike, determined to crush the annoying hero right there. Whipping out its tongue again, the creature tries another mental invasion. It floods Jang's mind with pure agony, but the warrior holds his ground. He tracks the beast's movements, timing his counter to the exact second. Predicting the exact trajectory, he gathers his remaining strength and strikes hard. His fist slams directly into the chest, sending the monster stumbling back. Jang laughs, mocked by how sluggish and stupid his enemy really is. The slow beast simply cannot keep up with his lightning-fast movements anymore. Leaping high into the air, Jang twists his body for an aerial assault. He rains down a flurry of incredibly fast, pinpoint strikes. With every landed hit, the tide of this battle shifts completely. The monster writhes in agony, totally unable to protect itself. It whimpers and groans, its stiff body failing to respond to commands. Each successive strike inflicts deep wounds, draining its remaining life force. Slowly, the beast begins to lose consciousness as its body shuts down. Jang steps in to deliver the final, brutal finishing blow. He gives the creature zero room to breathe, completely dominating the battlefield. He hammers his fist straight into its skull, crushing all resistance. The last bits of life quickly drain from the defeated monster. It slumps forward, completely unconscious and ready to die. Driven by pure battle adrenaline, Jang prepares to activate his decapitation skill. He raises his blade, ready to sever the head and end this. But as his arm swings back, he suddenly freezes, paralyzed by an unexpected force. An invisible force held his hand back. Gasping for air, the young man couldn't comprehend what had just stopped him or what was happening. A wave of shock and dread washed over him. Staring at the beast, he suddenly saw the face of the night watch guard, who weakly asked where they were and what had. Utterly baffled, Shio couldn't understand how this soldier was still alive, let alone why he turned into this creature in the shadow world. Endless.